across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and we've got a very busy programme, even if most people are watching the football, which it looks like it's quite a good game. I thought it'd be a bit boring, but we've been watching it out there, as well as obviously working really hard on this show. Right, coming up at midnight, we are going to be crossing over to the US because the results will be in then, and I just want to get an idea of the England fans and what's going on with them, so we will be doing that. But also during the talkback hour, I do want to hear from you on this. The offence of murder could be watered down in the biggest shake-up in decades. This is under plans by the Law Commission. The independent body which makes law reform recommendations to ministers is launching a consultation about the creation of a US-style system where killers could be tried for either first-degree or second-degree murder, depending on their level of culpability. It's been proposed splitting the crime of murder into two tiers, allowing judges, we know how we feel about judges, to set a discretionary sentence rather than having to hand out a mandatory life sentence to convicted killers. The Law Commission also wants jurors to be able to reach a verdict of murder with a partial defence. Should there really ever be any defence in a murder trial? I mean, apart from the defence that they get anyway, but once you've been found guilty of killing somebody, taking somebody's life, should there be more mitigation applied to that? Because that's what it looks like to me. Is this another watering down of our laws? I mean, you wouldn't think so in America. Everybody praises the American system because it seems to be a lot harsher than ours. So we'll be talking to somebody in America actually about these homicide laws and how it will change fundamentally in Britain. That just because you're a killer, it doesn't mean that you're a first-degree murderer. So is this watering it down? Is this yet another weakening of our legal system, or is this an intelligent move towards making sure that the right people get the right sentence for the right crime? So that's what we're going to be talking about at midnight. I've got examples for you about what first degree and second degree and manslaughter and things like that would look like. Manslaughter will still be on the statute, by the way. So it's just they're just watering down or splitting murder into 2 degrees. So taking somebody's life, there's mitigation is basically what they're saying. 0344 499 1000, calls charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. So that's the conversation at midnight. Also coming up at 11 o'clock, we have the wonderful Vincent Moss. He's going to be here in the studio to go through the papers, none of which have been printed yet, because they're obviously waiting, I would imagine, for the football result. The England-Croatia match. They'll be waiting for that. By the way, we're going to be keeping an eye on the England match as well, so I will let you know if there's any goals scored or whatever. I think it's 2-2 currently. It was when I came into the studio. Yes, I'm getting nods. So it's 2-2 at the moment, turning out to be quite an exciting game. Now, though, what else is coming up? We're going to be talking about the Dartmoor ponies. This is an extraordinary story. I don't know if you've seen it. It's been knocking about for a little bit, but things have changed today. But Natural England has demanded that 75% of livestock grazing on the land of Dartmoor must go. And farmers put their sheep and their cattle on Dartmoor. And, of course, those sheep and those cattle have got money attached to them. So they're not going to want to cull their sheep or cattle or not put them on Dartmoor for grazing. So the obvious then is to cull the ponies, the Dartmoor ponies that have been on that land for 4,500 years. It would result in 9 out of 10 of those ponies being killed, which then, in terms of genetics and things, pretty much wipes out the species. It pretty much wipes out these little ponies. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Like I said, we're going to be looking at the major overhaul of murder laws into first and second degree. So all of that is to come in the next few hours. But first of all, the G7 summit in France has wrapped up with major agreements on security and trade, headlined by a unanimous backing for Trump's tentative peace deal with Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. What has annoyed me absolutely about this is Trump is sitting there thinking that the whole of the G7 should be grateful to him for opening, or at least agreeing to have the Strait of Hormuz opened when it was fully opened and working without tolls and without any money costing to anybody on the 27th of February this year. Well, the alliance also pledged to diversify supply chains and to cut critical mineral dependency on China to under 60% by 2030. Well, Trump routinely stole the spotlight, arriving late to a morning session and jokingly telling fellow world leaders, "I am the boss." Reflecting on the stalled Russia-Ukraine conflict, he said he thought it would have been an easier one for him to solve. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pressed for immediate Western air defence reinforcements and secured renewed future military commitments from key European allies. Of course, Ukraine not being part of the G7, but was a special guest there, as were some other countries as well. We're here to discuss the G7 and talk what it actually achieved, what it actually did. Is anything fundamentally changed from this meeting, aside from all the puff and bluster? Joining me now to discuss it is Professor Anthony Glees, who's a Security and Intelligence Studies Professor at Buckingham University. Good to see you again, Anthony. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure, Petrie.
OK, look, there were lots of meetings, lots of little side meetings and lots of little chats. Overall, just a broad brush, how do you think it went with Trump being there? I mean, look, he's caused an awful lot of problems for the Europeans and his so-called allies that he has called names to: Italy, France, Germany. I mean, it's never-ending, actually, insults from Donald Trump, but everybody seemed to suck it up.
Well, you know, Petrie, for me, the most extraordinary thing, really, was President Trump's press conference. It went on, I think, for 40 minutes. I'm a nerd, and I meant to watch these things from beginning to end, but he went round the same territory 3 or 4 times. He was very short of breath. I would urge people to listen to this press conference.
Yes, I agree.
I think what it tells us is that actually he's come to the end. He's had his Waterloo. And I think the repercussions of this press conference and the things he said will not only finish Trump off as a leading figure, as an authoritative figure as far as the West is concerned, but probably scupper his final time in office. I mean, you could not see that press conference and not say, this man is delusional. He's trying to sell his fellow G7 leaders, the rest of the world, a deal that is not a peace deal in the full meaning of the word. It's a memorandum of understanding. And what it shows is that far from defeating the Ayatollahs, far from defeating the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, he has strengthened them. They've come out of this stronger. Yes, I know that awful things have happened to the Iranian people, and as Trump said, he's taken down the top 2 tiers of the Iranian leadership whilst they were having breakfast. That all sounds absolutely wonderful, but at the end of the day, he's dealing with an Islamist, jihadist, revolutionary regime who will fight to the bitter end. And if you destroy their buildings, they'll fight from caves. If you take away their missiles, not that he has, I mean, a large amount of them are still there, they will fight you with kitchen knives. And the situation is actually worse than it was before February, the end of February, when he went into this war. But you could see he didn't really believe in himself. It was the same thing going round and round and round. And he looked pooped. He looked like he'd really had it. So I think to feel that this G7 produced something important and significant. There's one exception, which I'd like to come to, but apart from that one exception, as we say in the business, this was yet another conference at Evian in France. If you write Evian backwards, it spells naive. And that's what you would be to think that this conference actually produced any meaningful result that would take the world further. Yeah, it's good. Of course it's good. If the Strait of Hormuz is open, it's good. If the fighting stops, it's good. But the only thing that I could see positive affected what Trump said about two people who are important and important in our narrative here in the UK. First of all, Trump, to an extent, attacked Netanyahu. He kind of made a joke of the awful killing that has gone on. And even Trump said, you don't blow up a building because you think some Hezbollah guy has gone through the front door. You don't kill everybody. And then he said, oh, well, this is the kind of thing that Netanyahu does. He's crazy, he said before. And I think that will shiver the timbers of Netanyahu and his crackpot government in Israel. And the other thing he said, which I think is the most positive thing, he said with Zelensky, he said he'd had a conversation with Putin. It had been a very good conversation. He then said he'd had a conversation with Zelensky, and that had been a very, very good conversation. He also referred to Russia as the offensive power in the Ukrainian war. Now, for us here in the United Kingdom, that, obvious, that's the way it is. But it does show that Trump has been deflated. The things he thought he could do, his braggadocio, his ending wars and being a peacemaker, he hasn't delivered any of those things. Rather, he's demonstrated his own limits, and he's demonstrated the limits of the power of the United States. So a terrible, terrible clangor, and it would be, as I say, naive to think otherwise.
Looking at Trump, though, it always baffles me that he'll be in a room full of people that know what they're talking about and try to convince them that this is a truly historic deal and that he's ended another war and that we should be grateful. That was the tone. That the Strait of Hormuz would be reopened. But again, what astounds me is those people in the room applaud him and say, "Thank you, Mr. Trump."
Well, I think that's right. I mean, seeing him at his press conference with Rubio and one of the other big wigs there, they both tried hard not to giggle. Rubio couldn't stop himself from smirking at one stage. They looked extremely embarrassed to be there. They didn't know what to do. They were both like little boys wanting to go and do a wee-wee, but not daring to put their hand up. I mean, it was a pathetic display. And the people who are taken in by Trump are largely people who don't understand about the world, who don't care about the world. They're the people that like the sort of cage fighting that went on to celebrate Trump's birthday, like the Emperor Nero, and a gladiatorial contest. It's almost incredible. And the people who do understand what's going on will dismiss this and dismiss Trump as fluff. He has not achieved anything. You talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, it was open and it was free before the war started. And now Trump says it will be open, and we must earnestly hope that it will be. And Trump says it will be free for, I think,
60 days. 60 days, I think it was. But that's not enough for the world.
Of course not.
Is it?
It's not enough. And what Trump has done has to take away from Iran a nuclear weapon that I don't believe the Iranians ever really wanted, and given them a much more powerful weapon, namely closure of the Strait of Hormuz, that can cripple the world's economy, particularly in Southeast Asia, our friends in Australia, New Zealand. They've been absolutely hammered by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And the Iranians aren't stupid. They realize that they have achieved something very massive. What's more, the regime of the Ayatollahs, which Trump said, you know, he would obliterate and it would be the end of, have come out much stronger. And Trump tried to say, well, there has been regime change because we've killed the first two layers of the leadership, and those we've got now, they're different. He said, I think they're kind of better. They're less radicalized. He wouldn't know a radicalized Iranian leader from Melania Trump's washing list. He's completely out of his depth with this stuff. And just seeing him reading off statistic after statistic, they were all embarrassed. But I don't think we should make too much of this, but I feel that if there were to be something coming out of the G7, it would be the full awareness on the part of the European leaders that they cannot rely on this president. Yeah. They cannot rely on this country. They cannot rely on an American leadership. You say they dare say boo to the goose. They know he's talking nonsense, but they don't dare do anything about it. And that has huge repercussions for us, particularly at this very dangerous time in our own national story here in the UK.
But looking at the G7, you know, Macron, who Donald Trump has been incredibly offensive towards, both his political career and his personal life, and yet Versailles is open to Trump this evening. They're probably right now sitting in some gold-gilded dining room, enjoying the finest that France has to offer. I just wonder if there's ever going to be a point that these leaders grow a pair and stop sucking up to this man who clearly has no respect for any of them.
Yeah, well, I think a fairly awful banquet, because as everybody knows, Trump does not like fine dining, and he doubtless have the best cuisine France could offer, and he's probably having a hamburger and chips. He also doesn't drink, so the finest wines France has to offer, you know, he'll be drinking his Coca-Cola as he always does. Well, I think history will have to judge whether the line taken, in particular by our Prime Minister, for the moment, Sir Keir Starmer, that the best thing to do was to try to humour Trump in the hope that you would win his friendship, or whether the best thing would have been to have been very firm from the start, because Trump does not like losers. And I mean, it must be painful at that dinner for Sir Keir Starmer and that lovely lady Vic to be there and to know that Trump basically despises Starmer because he now sees Starmer as a loser, despite all the things, the second state visit, all of that turned to nothing. And Macron, of course, he's come out of this stronger, and I think Trump will like the fact that Macron, again, unlike us here in the United Kingdom, is taking care of the defence of France and the defence of Europe. And, the French do not rely on clapped-out, trident-laden nuclear submarines to deliver the Armageddon response to any nuclear attack that isn't going to come from Putin. They have tactical nuclear weapons that the French Foster jets can carry, be much more lethal. France is much safer from Russia than we are now in the UK. So he is the boss man, really, and like the French do, don't they? They're very good at laughing down their sleeves at the brash Anglo-Americans, and I bet you that's what Macron, and indeed Madame Macron, is doing tonight. I think she's quite happy to see Trump humiliated by the Ayatollahs. He couldn't make it up.
You really couldn't make it up. She's glad that he's let go of her hand eventually as well. That was very strange. But just before I let you go, Anthony, the big question now is Israel, isn't it? It is Netanyahu who's fighting his own war. Let's be honest. They've separated in their intentions now. He said he has absolutely no intention of vacating Lebanon. The land that he's captured he plans to keep. and he has no intention of not seizing this opportunity, as he sees it, to completely annihilate Hezbollah. Will there become a rift between? They're both going, no, we still love each other, but he's crazy and he's an idiot, and he's let me down, and they're not sounding like mates at the moment. But have they been through worse before? I don't think they have.
I think what Netanyahu has offered his people is the one thing that Trump and the Americans said they despised above all other things, namely perpetual war. It's a cliche to say it's easy to start a war, it's harder to stop it. But war and fighting and bombing people and destroying the leadership, that is the only thing that Netanyahu can offer his people. As far as the right wing are concerned, of course, they're absolutely crucial for Netanyahu's support. He's doing all sorts of very, very wicked things in letting the Israeli right develop their settlements in what we call the West Bank. And doing untold harm and causing great misery. Even that law that they passed allowing Palestinian Arabs, but not Jews, to suffer the death penalty by being tried in special military courts who still have the death penalty or will be given the death penalty in Israel. These are all terrible, terrible things. And I don't think that Netanyahu can fight his way out of the problems that he has caused forever. It can't go on forever. And if I were Netanyahu, as I said before, all this Bibi this and Bibi that, and he's a bit crazy and a bit wild, and he bombs here and he bombs there. Many MAGA Americans and thinking MAGA Americans believe that Netanyahu was leading Trump by the nose into an idiotic war that America could only lose, and another Vietnam, and think of the trauma that losing the Vietnam, in effect, caused America. So I think it's not just Trump's Waterloo. I think this is also Netanyahu's Waterloo. His policy, there is no way out from his policy of bombing. And you just look, what has he achieved? Israeli intelligence, meant to be the best in the world, knew all the Ayatollahs were going to be having breakfast at the beginning, at the end of February, the beginning of the attack on Iran. They were all wiped out, and, looks wonderful, but didn't stop the war at all, and did not weaken Iran. And in the same way, this endless killing of people the Israelis saying are Hezbollah leaders, maybe they are Hezbollah's leaders, but they breed like rabbits in those parts. And the more he bombs Lebanon, and the more he humiliates those still alive in Gaza, and we believe, 75 to 80,000 innocent Gazans were killed in the Israeli offensive, caused, of course, by Hamas. We don't forget that, absolutely not. But there's huge loss of life. It's a very simple question. After that huge loss of life, are the Arabs in the Middle East going to like Israel more, or are they going to like Israel less? And I actually think there's only one answer to that. And that answer means that there can be no real security for Israel unless there is a radical change of course. They're on a hiding to nothing. They're on a road to nowhere. They can smash the entire place up, turn it all into rubble and concrete, but still they will not have defeated the ideas that cause them and us so much pain. So again, I think, it's Waterloo for Trump, but it's Waterloo for Netanyahu too. It's their last stand, and nothing will be the same after this G7, even if it takes some time for it to play through the international system.
Anthony, as ever, always a delight to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed. Professor Anthony Glees there, Security and Intelligence Studies Professor at Buckingham University. Right, quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And coming up at midnight, like I said, there's going to be slightly different because of the football. We are crossing over to the US, but I'm going to be talking or asking you about this major overhaul of the murder law, of murder, the offence of murder, which some people are suggesting is being watered down. The offence of murder could be watered down in the biggest shake-up in decades under plans by the Law Commission. This is to split murder into two pieces. So you've got first-degree murder and then you've got second-degree murder. First-degree murder will come with the mandatory life sentence, where judges have got no leeway there at all, and that'll be for people who have intentionally left the house with a gun to shoot somebody, right? But I thought murder was that anyway. It's the intent. It's about intent with murder. But anyway, and then second-degree murder is not manslaughter, because manslaughter will still be on statute, but it is murder with a partial defence. So it does sound a bit watered down, doesn't it? So with a partial defence. What is the partial defence of taking somebody else's life? We've already covered with manslaughter, and we've got murder. But now we're going to have first and second degree murder. So we'll be discussing that a little bit later on. But I want to know from you, is there ever really a partial defence when it comes to taking somebody's life? We already have mitigations. We know that with Calacone, right? Valdo Calacone. He didn't even face a murder trial. He went straight to a hospital. So his mitigation was that he wasn't mentally well. But second degree murder, it looks like it's just like, yeah, a few more excuses to let people off the hook. And the judges, by the way, in second-degree murder will have a say in what those sentences might be. They have a lot more leeway. So that is coming up. Do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. But before I go to the break, we have some exciting news to share with you from our friends at Talk Sport, with the World Cup now underway. And the game, by the way, is 3-2 to England at the moment, 3-2. Croatia and England, to England. With the World Cup underway, talkSPORT, in the meantime, have teamed up to create a lager. It's called So Good Lager, which will be poured from all O'Neill's pubs and some of the best sports pubs across the UK. You can find your nearest pub by visiting talksport.com/so good. It's 18 plus, and please drink responsibly.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. So the England-Croatia game is still 3-2 with 20 minutes to go. So I'll keep you updated with that if you're the least bit interested. But there you go. Just a reminder that's coming up at the top of the hour. We have Vincent Moss coming into the studio, who's going to be going through the newspapers, which I think are still not ready because they're waiting for that score to plaster it all over the front pages. So we will be doing the papers at 11 o'clock as usual. And don't forget, we're talking about the Dartmoor ponies in about 15 to 20 minutes' time. But before that, the UK Law Commission is reviewing homicide laws, proposing a landmark shift to split murder into first and second degree categories. At the moment, English law uses a one-size-fits-all approach. Any murder conviction, whether the perpetrator intended to kill or simply intended to cause serious injury, carries a mandatory life sentence. Under the proposed reforms, first-degree murder would be reserved strictly for intentional killings, retaining the mandatory life tariff. Second-degree murder would apply to cases where the offender only intended to cause serious harm, or where partial defences like diminished responsibility applies, although we still have manslaughter on the statute. This would introduce discretionary sentencing to reflect an offender's true culpability. What I don't understand, if you set a building on fire because you're an arsonist and you kill people, then there would be a culpable excuse that you didn't murder them. Well, you didn't first-degree murder them, you second-degree murdered them because you didn't intend to kill them, but by setting the building alight, you pretty much did. So that's where I'm confused. Here to help me go through this is Stephanie Roberts, a senior lecturer teaching criminal law and criminal procedure and evidence at the University of Westminster. Good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. So in that case that I've just mentioned there, okay, an arsonist who just wants to stand back and watch a place burned down, but they end up killing 3 people that they didn't know were in the building, right? But they were in the building, it's a housing building. That would presumably, under this law, be second-degree murder, not first-degree murder.
There was no intention to kill or cause grievous bodily harm, then they wouldn't be convicted of murder under either degree. So at the moment, that would come under manslaughter, because
even though the setting of the fire is intentional?
Well, that comes under unlawful act manslaughter. So under unlawful act manslaughter, person commits an unlawful act, there's a dangerous act, and then we have to show that there was a causal link between the unlawful act. In that case, it would be setting the fire. So the mind of the person is focused on the arson. If somebody happens to die during the course of those activities, then we would say that was unlawful act manslaughter, because if they don't know people are in there, there's no intention to kill them, and there's no intention to cause grievous bodily harm to them.
And yet they have still killed somebody.
But that's why it's manslaughter.
So how is manslaughter going to be different to second-degree murder? Because I thought murder was the intentional act of taking somebody's life. That's very specifically murder. And manslaughter, if you like, is the unintentional or other mitigations, right? So where does second-degree murder fit into that, if we're still going to have manslaughter on the statute?
Well, intention is the key to murder. So the offences generally have an actus reus. They generally have a mens rea. So the actus reus is the guilty act, if you like. So that's the activity the person is doing. So in that scenario, it would be setting fire to the building. They also have a mens rea, generally, not every offence, but generally. So the mens rea represents the culpability. So it represents the blameworthiness of the person. So if you intend to kill or you intend to cause grievous bodily harm, intention is the mens rea for murder. So manslaughter is where you don't have intention. You have what we call a reckless state of mind. So there are different types of manslaughter. You have unlawful act manslaughter. You also have gross negligence manslaughter. So the jury will often be, the person will be charged with murder and manslaughter, and then it's up to the jury to decide whether there's an intention or not. So if they don't feel that there was an intention to kill or cause grievous bodily harm, then they will be directed to consider manslaughter. So, and then they will look under, there's potentially 3 types of manslaughter, including reckless manslaughter, but the jury have to be sure that there's no intention. So what the Law Commission are trying to do is to recognise that there may be a difference in culpability between an intention to kill and an intention to cause serious harm. At the moment, we can label somebody a murderer if they don't intend to kill anybody. They only intend them serious harm. So, and there's not an agreed, you know, these are just ideas at the moment. This is a consultation paper. So there's no agreement on that, whether, you know, there is the same level of culpability between intending to kill and intending to cause grievous bodily harm. But changing it to first degree and second degree murder would be acknowledging, if you like, that there is a difference in the person's blameworthiness. I mean, that in both cases that somebody has died, so it's a very serious matter, of course. But what the Law Commission is trying to do is to differentiate between different levels of culpability. So some would argue the person who intends to kill is more blameworthy than the person who just intends grievous bodily harm. Some people argue there's no difference.
Oh, no, because I was just thinking that, you know, if I had a knife, right, and I went out and I stabbed somebody, but I stabbed them, let's say, in the leg, because I just thought, oh, well, they won't die, but I hit a main artery and they died. That doesn't make any difference. I still went out, I still had a knife, I still stabbed somebody deliberately, but I can say I didn't mean to kill them and get away with murder too. That's
what obviously the lawyer would argue. So at the moment, the jury doesn't have to make that.
Nuts to me, because that I've still done all of those things, all of those wrong things, and then gone, oops, I didn't mean it.
Well, I mean, we frame murder around intention because intention is the most culpable state of mind that the person has. We're convicting them of a very serious offence and we're potentially locking them away for a very long time. So we need to be clear, or the jury needs to be clear, when they are convicting somebody of murder, that they actually have committed murder. So at the moment, those distinctions are not important because they can decide, they don't really have to get into, is it an intention to kill? Is it an intention to cause grievous bodily harm as such? Because they can convict the person anyway, whether it's either of those two. So if they think it's an intention to cause serious bodily harm, they don't even need to go further to consider whether it's an intention to kill. But there is a school of thought that says that the mens rea should match the actus reus. So if the actus reus is activities that kill somebody, then we should have a corresponding mens rea. So we should only be locking people up for murder if they intend to kill somebody. I mean, the Law Commission are still saying they're going to be murder. So the difference, though, will be in the sentencing because first-degree murder will still have the mandatory life sentence. So everybody convicted of murder has a mandatory life sentence. That doesn't mean they're all going to prison for life. Some people are. They're given a whole life term, but usually they're given a tariff. So they're given a period of years. That is the punishment phase, if you like, of the sentence. So once that tariff period is up, they are then eligible for parole. So they go before the parole board and the parole board decides whether to let them out. So everybody, however they've killed somebody, is included in that mandatory life sentence. So we don't distinguish between, for example, a mercy killer who kills a terminally ill relative that's asked them to kill them, and somebody who's just gone up to somebody in the street and shot them dead. The mandatory life sentence applies to both. But where we now differ, what the Law Commission are proposing, is that we only have the mandatory life sentence for first-degree murder. And then for second-degree murder, which would be an intention to cause grievous bodily harm, it's a discretionary life sentence. So the judge has much more flexibility in sentencing the person. So they would say, well, that reflects that an intention to cause grievous bodily harm is less culpable than an intention to kill somebody. Do you agree with that yourself? Do you agree that the intention to cause grievous bodily harm, which is a serious offence in its own right, but then leads to murder,
that they should get an easier ride for it?
Well, I mean, there's usually a difference in these things between a very legalistic, discussion of law and, what the public would understand. I mean, I think, in murder cases, I do think that there is a difference between intending to cause grievous bodily harm and intending to kill somebody. And I do think...
But I would see somebody with a knife anyway, if somebody, God forbid, hurt my boy, and they said, oh, well, I didn't mean to, but I did have a knife on me, and I did stab him, but I rather hoped I wouldn't kill him. I would still see that as absolutely murder in intent and in every other way. And I'm sure the public would as well.
Oh, I'm sure they would. I mean, murder is a very, very serious effect.
Taking somebody's life is very, very serious, yeah.
And some would say that we are labelling people murderers when they're not.
But they're still killers.
They've still killed somebody, but they're not murderers in the sense that they intended to kill the person. So if you only intend serious harm, people would say, why are we labelling those people as murderers? That we're putting people in prison
Do you think the public would say that? I don't.
No. I mean, I think, I think the public would potentially see these as letting people off murder. But in terms of it being, I mean, the Law Commission, they are they're an independent body, but they're asked by the government to look into a particular area. They made very similar proposals in 2006, which the government then didn't adopt, of having a structure of homicide. I mean, a homicide is a very complicated area, particularly for juries. So at the moment, we can't ask juries why they make the decisions they do, because they're not allowed to talk about that. So we don't know whether, for example, if a jury is deciding, does the person have an intention to kill or cause grievous bodily harm, they may decide it's grievous bodily harm, but they don't want to label that person a murderer, so they acquit them.
But I'm still not clear as to why second-degree murder is in any way really different to the manslaughter charge we already have on statute.
Well,
because that's there, as you said. If you can't find them guilty of murder, find them guilty of manslaughter.
Because murder and manslaughter require a different state of mind. So the jury, when they're deciding whether somebody has intention, they are looking at it through the eyes of the defendant. So it's what we call a subjective test. So they're trying to work out what was in the defendant's mind at the time they committed the crime. And we have different types of intention. We have, direct and oblique intention, which I won't go into. But manslaughter is a different state of mind. So manslaughter is where they don't have an intention.
But I thought second-degree murder was as well.
Well, if it goes, yes, if the changes are made, second-degree murder would require intention. But that's really no different from now in terms of murder and manslaughter, because murder now requires intention.
Yeah.
And manslaughter
So we don't need second-degree murder then, because we've already got murder and manslaughter.
Well, that's a perfectly fine argument. I mean, these are just suggestions at the moment.
Yeah.
What they're asking for are responses. They want people to respond. Anybody can respond to a Law Commission report. So, I would advise anybody just to respond. But that's a perfectly valid argument.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see the difference between murder too and manslaughter. Doesn't seem to make much sense. Anyway, it's brilliant talking to you. Thank you. I think I'm a little bit clearer on that now. Stephanie Roberts, Senior Lecturer teaching Criminal Law and Criminal Procedure and Evidence at the University of Westminster. Quick break and then back to talk about the Dartmoor ponies.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up at the top of the hour is Vincent Moss. I just wanted to tell you about that. The game is still going. It's got 6 minutes to go and it's still 3-2, but I can see people biting their nails next door who really should be working on this programme, but they're watching the football. Oh, another goal. Is that another goal? 4-2. 4-2 with, what, 5 minutes to go. Yeah, nobody's listening to me. I'm on my own. I'm literally on my own while the football plays out. Anyway, let's move on. The Dartmoor ponies are facing a mass cull due to a new biodiversity guideline from Natural England. In an effort to restore moorland habitats, farmers are being forced to drastically reduce grazing livestock numbers. Wild ponies are now included in strict new rotas alongside commercial cattle and sheep, and financially pressed farmers will be forced to prioritise profitable livestock, of course, over the ponies. Campaigners warn this could wipe out up to 90% of the already dwindling population, risking a local extinction. Ironically, these native ponies actually help biodiversity by eating the invasive moorland grasses that the sheep and the cows don't like. After the issue was raised, the leaders of all four major parties have joined forces and demanded Natural England abandon its plans. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Vicky Mitzi, who's a journalist and broadcaster in Devon and lives right next door to Dartmoor.
Well, I was with the ponies just the other day, actually, in their glory.
And they are glorious. I mean, my father heralds from Truro, so we were often in Cornwall, Devon, and go on the way and stop in Dartmoor and have a look at the ponies. And they are wonderful. They've been there for 4,500 years.
Yes,
haven't they?
Since the Bronze Age.
It's extraordinary. So talk me through what's happening at the moment. How do the locals feel about it?
Oh, well, that's the nerve here. They're quite divided because the story needs a little bit of picking apart, if you like, because the locals are up in arms about any further decline. I think that's what they're fearing, because it has been over the past 20-25 years a steady decline, and this particular organisation, which has rallied against local organisation, which has rallied against Natural England, has been really worried that in the I'm having a bit of a moment, sorry. My mind just went blank. They're worried about 9 in 10 of Dartmoor ponies being culled. They're saying that what Natural England is wanting to do is cap the amount of livestock that farmers can have grazing, and it's about ecology. It's about being overgrazed on Dartmoor, and that will then include these semi-wild ponies in this quota. However, going back to local people are saying that they don't think that a cull is likely overall. And that's just through talking to charities and rescue sanctuaries, as I have been over the past couple of days.
But Natural England presumably could exclude these ponies from their cap, and therefore, because they're good for the biodiversity there, as I was just saying.
You did. Yes, exactly. They are good in one sense. However, it's again standing back from the picture and looking at what farmers are pressed to do in terms of, and it always comes down to economics. So if they are given a choice, and these numbers are varying as well. So we're looking at, 9 in 10, but that is 75% quota is what Natural England have proposed. However, we've got to keep in mind that Natural England is a quango. and therefore these are suggestions. There is nothing as yet. It's a great discussion around here, and there's a lot of talk about it. But I think the bottom line is that our beloved semi-wild ponies, and I do have to add the word semi in there, because they are owned by the same commoners, hill farmers, who are owning the other livestock. So what locals are saying is that they hope there isn't a choice to be made when quotas for grazing are being chosen, because in terms of economics, it obviously makes more sense to have your cows and your sheep, which give you something back into your pocket.
So will they just ignore this advice then? What are people saying? Because nobody wants these ponies to be wiped out. In fact, it's the only thing that's unified the four main political parties are saying that this would be an outrage. Keir Starmer has said that it won't happen under his watch. But if you want to protect the moorland, then what is the answer to this? As it is common ground, and farmers are at will to put sheep and cattle on here. So what would be the solution?
Well, it comes down to what Natural England have answered, in that they're not suggesting culling. They are not suggesting in any way even a reduction of numbers per se, from what I've heard, because what they want to do is reduce grazing. However, again, standing back, they can advise, as their role as executive, is that they are non-governmental. So this is an advisory statement from what I understand and no further. But when it comes down to it, there's been no investigation done by DEFRA officially since 2023, when they said that they would stand by, they would not see a reduction, and they would stand by the ponies and their numbers. And they actually said that the land was undergrazed. So Natural England are maintaining their position to say that it is up to the landowners themselves, and they very much want them to be involved, as with DEFRA will be asking them, as well as the association, the local charity, Dartmoor Hill Pony Association, who has rallied against these the Natural England activities. They'll be working together with DEFRA should further investigations be done. But I think now we just have to look at our grazing economy, and it's a balance coming between habitat restoration targets and animal campaigners, the environment and the biodiversity. Ponies are good for our biodiversity, and they are good for Devon, but we have to balance that with keeping people happy, and they'll all be involved in decisions. And as you say, the leaders, party leaders, are united on that, and they have underlined that the cull is not going to happen, and cross-party backing. You can't be stronger than that. Certainly all the locals, the petition now that has been started by Dartmoor Hill Pony Association has now hit, I think the last check was 150,000. This has been very good for that petition. People here won't let it happen. They're the heartbeat of our landscape.
Are they not protected, the ponies, in any way? Are they not a protected species?
Well, they do. They are animals just like the other animals here. So with protection, they do go through a process a couple of times a year of being rounded up. They're owned animals, so they're protected in a sense of, having the law to protect them. But they are, they do get sold, they do get moved, and that has caused, according to Dartmoor Hill Pony Association, the numbers to go from 6,000 or so 20 years ago to just under 1,000. And it's a lot to do with economics and whether you keep the mares for breeding, whether farmers, what are farmers going to do when feeding them costs them money, and it's costing them more money, and vets bills. You know, they look after these animals too, so they are the protectors, and that's where Natural England wants to involve them in these decisions. And I think it's a little bit heavy to say that they are recommending a cull. They are trying to do the hard balance of protecting the landscape at the same time as conserving the animals and keeping campaigners happy.
It's a really difficult one, but it wouldn't be the same without them. So it's like the New Forest, isn't it? And the other places where these semi-wild ponies are, they're absolutely delightful. And so the New Forest, I think, the New Forest, not the Forest of Dean, has got little donkeys on it, which I love. I love a little donkey. I wanted to take one home with me. They're so cute. Vicky, wonderful to see you again. I'm glad to see you looking so well. Vicky Mitzi there, journalist and broadcaster in Devon. So there is a petition if you want to go and sign that. Absolutely not. No cull on these Dartmoor ponies. Right, stay where you are. Vincent Moss will be in the studio in a few moments' time to go through the newspapers. Match at game over? Nearly over. Tell you later.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and this is Petrie, and with you until 1 o'clock. And as you may or may not have just heard in the news there, England won against Croatia 4-2. So there you go, I told you I'd keep you up to date with that. So it's a 4-2 win to England. I don't know what that means, apart from the fact they've won. I don't know who that... Does that mean they're going to go through to the next... Not yet, doesn't mean they're going to go through. 2 more games, apparently, before we know. I thought winning would push you through, but no, you've got to...
Gives you a good chance.
You've got a good chance because you've got to be the top of the people in your group.
Yes.
Is that right? OK, all right. Who knew these things? That's Vincent Moss, by the way, helping me out there with the football. Right, coming up, we are going to be crossing, in the midnight hour, because of the footy, we are going to be crossing over to the US to talk about the football and the fans and things like that. Also, we're going to be talking to somebody legal in America because I want to talk to them about this second-degree and first-degree murder charge that they've already got in the US, and we're thinking of implementing it here. A lot of people are saying this is charges are watered down. And as you heard from the interview that I just did with Stephanie Roberts there, is I don't know why we would have first-degree murder, second-degree murder and manslaughter, because the second-degree murder, if you like, in my view, in my non-legal brain, is murder without culpability. It's killing without full culpability, because murder is a very specific. I learnt this from my McNay's law book. Murder is taking somebody's life with intent. So how can you have murder too when you're saying that there are some mitigating circumstances? Because that's for manslaughter. So I honestly am confused about it. But a lot of people are saying this will be watering down murder. And I think that if you go out with a knife and you stab somebody, and you kill them, then that is murder. What murder 2 would allow is for you to say, I meant him or her grievous bodily harm, but I didn't mean to kill them. Well, that person's still dead, and you did it by taking a knife out with you. So for me, that's a watering down of the murder law, because your intention was to hurt somebody very badly, and the fact that you murdered them, I think, is still murder. I don't get it. I don't understand why we would have a second-tier murder when we've already got murder and manslaughter. Manslaughter will stay on the statute book, by the way. So I don't know what the difference will be between murder 2 and manslaughter. So this is the biggest shake-up in decades, this plan, but many people are suggesting this will water down a murder conviction. It also allows for a judge to have a discretion over the sentencing of murder 2. And I don't know about you, but I don't like it when judges have too much discretion, because then we see a very differing results for pretty much the same crime. Judges can decide how serious or how not serious they... I don't know. Personally, for me, I don't like it. I think it does water things down, but I'd like to hear from you. Let me know what you think. 03444 499 1000. A call's charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talker and your message to 87222. Well, as you know, Vincent Moss is in the studio with me now. Vincent, I know I'm not a legal brain, but I don't see the point of murder 2. Of second-degree murder, because murder's murder. I mean, the picture I just painted there, somebody goes out with a knife, they intend to stab me, they want to stab me, but they can say they didn't mean to kill me, they just wanted to cause grievous bodily harm, and they stab me and I die. That's still murder.
Well, exactly, and that's what I think most people will think. The only thing I wonder is it does give judges potentially more discretion over sentencing. So say, for example, somebody kills your brother or your mother or your partner, you may go and with a intent want to kill them. Now, that's a mitigation, some would argue. I mean, you still committed murder, but there's quite a lot of mitigation there. It doesn't justify it. So I think there's a potentially good thing that judges will have some leeway over sentencing. But the real issue is not first-degree murder, second-degree murder like you see in America. It's the sentencing. And people already think that many people who commit murder get too lenient sentences. Life does not mean life in this country, apart from a few people, I think 60 or 70, who get whole life tariffs, the very worst cases who are locked up pretty much forever. Most people who commit murder in this country are out sometime between 10 and 15, 16 years.
It's not life.
It's not. In America, it really is life. It really is
30,
life, 40, 50 years, or we die in prison.
500 years, right?
Exactly.
You see sentences of several hundred years where you know they're not getting out.
Exactly.
Not 10.
And I think people will think this will be a further watering down of sentencing. We know that the prisons, pretty much the population is about 90,000, pretty much full to bursting, has been for a while. We know there's a huge backlog in the criminal justice system. Courts are crumbling. Courts aren't sitting often enough. So I think people already feel that the justice system in many ways isn't working. Many serious crimes take years to get to trial. Government says it's trying to tackle that. The backlog is still serious rape cases, for example, potentially 2 or 3 years before victims can see justice. And I think people will see this as just a further way that the government and others are trying to deal with the prisons overcapacity issue and deal with the criminal justice backlog, and not, whatever the serious point is, about giving judges some leeway. The trouble is, as you said, when you give judges leeway, we tend to look at them and think they make the wrong decision a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, and you get two cases that are identical with two different sentences, and that as well also feels completely not right. It doesn't feel like that's reasonable. But I think that also a lot of these, the Law Commission and the legal system, they don't think about the victim. And this murder too, this second-degree murder with a partial defence. There's still a dead body. There's still somebody whose life has been taken from them. Some other people's loved ones have been taken from them. Where are they in this? That's always the thing as well, because if you say, yes, well, it was murder, but there is a partial defence, it's like, no, you killed my loved one. There is, what partial defence can there possibly be? I mean, like I said, the difference between murder and manslaughter is intention, right? That is very clear. So why do we need murder with intention and then murder with partial defence, and then manslaughter?
Well, exactly. And what you will see happening is, as happens at the moment, is plea bargaining being used a lot. And people are pretty much
to bring it down from murder 1 to murder 2.
And meaning a lesser sentence.
Yeah.
So somebody who's pretty much committed murder, as many people do now, claim diminished responsibility, and they look to try and go to
I didn't
hospital.
mean it. Didn't mean it. It wasn't, you know, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to just cause grievous bodily harm, which is bad enough, right? And in carrying out your attack or whatever it was for grievous bodily harm purposes, you accidentally kill somebody, like somebody getting their head kicked in, right? A couple of guys down the pub. And you start beating him up, which you want to cause grievous bodily harm, one too many kicks to the back of the head and that person's dead. That's not murder anymore, or it'll be murder 2, under a partial defence of, well, yeah, I was kicking him while he was down. I didn't mean to kill, I didn't set out to kill him. I just wanted to knock him unconscious. For me, that is still murder. That's murder 1.
Yes, and there's a grieving family there, and you see cases occasionally where somebody punches a victim outside a pub and they fall and they hit their head on the curb and they are killed, which is effectively murder. I think people will look at this and they'll just think it means shorter sentences at a time when people want longer sentences. We've seen some terrible cases recently where cases have been had to refer to the Court of Appeal because some of the judge sentencing, particularly in sexual crimes cases, has looked very, very lenient, and if anything, the sentences need to go up. And people, I think, will be worried that this will just be a further watering down of sentencing and not a step forward in terms of criminal justice.
Yeah, because if they don't meet the barrier for manslaughter, then they would likely be able to push it down to murder 2 from murder 1. And that, again, you know, they'll say, well, oh, yeah, well, you did murder him, but if you say you didn't mean to, then there's no intent there. So, you know, you might have taken a gun out, you might have pointed it at him, you might have pulled the trigger, but you didn't mean to kill him, OK, and therefore you'll go down to murder 2.
Exactly, and people who are perhaps committing crimes at 20, 21, 22 are already out when their victims are dead at 35 or after 14, 15 years. So if there's a further watering down of the time they spend there,
for example.
Which is, and who knows what will happen in terms of cutting sentencing time. It's already down to potentially half or a third of time off for good behaviour and to help empty the prisons because they're so full. So, yeah, you could see people committing murder and being out potentially in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, which is pretty short.
Because they wouldn't get away with manslaughter. A jury wouldn't say no. They would say yes, it is murder. So it just gives them another opportunity to get away with something.
Yes, and it'd be very interesting to hear what victims groups have got to say about these proposals, because I would imagine that they would not be in favour.
No, I can't imagine that any of them would be in favour of this. It literally just, I mean, OK, maybe there needs to be things looked at, but I just think that this is tinkering with something that doesn't necessarily need to be there. There's this envisaged that only first-degree murder would still carry a mandatory life sentence, with the lower offences carrying a discretionary sentence.
Exactly, which might just be a few years. And as we've already said, life doesn't mean life in this country already anyway, unless you're on a whole life tariff, which is very,
very rare because of human rights laws. Yes. You're not allowed to put people in, but they do that in America. Like I said, you get sentences there of, you know, 400 or 500 years in some cases, yes. and you just know that those people are never going to come out. I mean, of course, they've still got the death sentence in some states as well. The Law Commission said it wants to address public fury over cases like the Nottingham attacker, Valdo Callicane, who was given a hospital order. But that wouldn't have changed anyway. No. He wouldn't have been put on trial for second-degree murder, even with a partial defence for having killed somebody. They also want to create a bespoke law, a homicide offence of controlling or coercive behaviour in an intimate relationship which leads to a victim's suicide. And this comes after a series of cases where allegedly abusive husbands have been put on trial for murder after being accused of driving their wife to suicide. But judges have been reluctant to convict them on the murder charge. So this would be separate from murder 1 and murder 2, a bespoke homicide. When did we start calling murder homicide as well, by the way?
Well, it's American television shows you, isn't it? But I think that one would be quite dangerous. If somebody is in a coercive, controlling relationship and then maybe commits suicide 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, I mean, it'd be quite the evidential burden to prove that the suicide was linked to that, I think would be very difficult. I mean, maybe entirely justified to look for that prosecution, but I think it could be quite challenging to sort of prove a direct link between somebody's suicide, because especially if you've got a grieving family around it, they will be looking for people to blame for the suicide.
Of course.
And it does open all sorts of potential problems, I suspect.
Yeah, I don't know. But also they're saying that it would involve, this would also help in cases where there are multiple defendants or gang killings. The prosecution would be able to differentiate between the culpability of a principal offender who delivered the fatal blow and an accessory who assisted or encouraged the principal offender, resulting in more proportionate sentences. But again, that's murder and manslaughter. We're already covered, thanks. Why do we need this? Anyway, it remains to be seen. It is just a commission at the moment, but this is they're making recommendations to ministers, and of course we're losing juries as well, which is a great thing, obviously. So I don't know. We might as well just not bother. Let's take a break. Come back in a sec and go through the papers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk. So I'm just looking up at the screen at some England fans in Sheffield jumping around in delight at the England win over Croatia 4-2. with me in the studio is Vincent Moss. He's here to help me go through the papers as a former political editor. We've only got 4 of them because they're all waiting for the England score, which they've just got. So they'll be furiously banging that on the front page and getting them out the door. But we've got The Guardian at the moment. Team Burnham talks ministers out of resigning to avoid chaos. Now, there's not an awful lot we can say about any of this, really, because there is tomorrow is the day for the by-election in Makerfield, which is going to either make a new MP or not.
Well, exactly. I mean, the Makerfield by-election Thursday, everybody at Westminster at least expects Andy Burnham, the Labour candidate, to win. And of course, if he wins, it's about what that means for Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and his future, because there's an awful lot of people in the Labour Party that want to get rid of Keir Starmer, although Keir Starmer says he's not going to go anywhere and he will fight if there is a challenge. So the Guardian headline is suggesting that to avoid instability and the threat that further ministers will resign in the coming days, that Team Burnham is trying to talk them out of doing that because it doesn't want to happen. They don't want that to happen. They've already, in recent days, we've seen 2 defence ministers go over the not getting enough money for the defence budget, and the threat of further resignations could potentially cause all sorts of instability, not just in the government, but in the financial markets, as we always have to take account of these days, in the bond market. So senior campaign figures in the Burnham campaign is saying we're trying to ensure that there aren't any resignations. We can't have, they say, a Boris-style collapse.
Well, I mean, Keir Starmer has another plan, doesn't he? And that is to offer Andy Burnham a job.
Yes, and that seems quite sensible. Try and bind him in and stop him challenging. But I don't think Andy Burnham has got any interest in that, and he won't be doing that. So I think he's already made clear through friends that he wouldn't be interested in a job. And of course, in addition to Andy Burnham potentially challenging him, assuming he wins the by-election, which of course he may not do, you've got Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary, who will be looking to throw his hat in the ring.
Well, Al Combs as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, Deputy Defence Minister. He's looking at throwing his hat.
He is, and he's done very well in recent days since he quit as Defence Minister. And there's pressure from many people in the Labour Party for a woman candidate to stand. So potentially Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, could stand, because otherwise...
Not Angela Rayner.
It doesn't sound like Angela Rayner's going to stand at the moment. It looks like she would back Andy Burnham, but wouldn't look great if there's 3 or 4 candidates and they're all men. And of course, the Labour Party's still yet to have a female leader, so there's pressure from that wing of the party. Well,
it's a big day tomorrow and Friday, isn't it? Really, to find out what the future looks like in political terms, anyway.
Yes, and a big weekend for Keir Starmer, because there's pressure within the party saying he's got to make up his mind over the weekend about. A lot of them are hoping he will set a timetable for his departure, and he's not indicating that he would do that at all. But there is enthusiasm from those who want him to go to him to do that.
Yeah, we'll see. The other story on the front page of The Guardian, this is about the BBC cuts. The BBC is going to have to axe as many as 2,000 jobs with some compulsory redundancies and trim 500 million across the next 3 years. Some in the BBC also already fear cuts will lead to a strike. The programmes that are going, BBC Radio 4's The World Tonight, which is a big beast of a show, and it's been around for more than 50 years. There's The World Today and the World Tonight. I think my brother worked on both of those, actually. I worked in the same newsroom when I was on World Service, because it's a huge newsroom. And also, they're going to be cutting production teams across the weekends, amalgamating them, making the same production team look after 2 programmes instead of 1 programme. And all of these cuts are coming, it seems, at the sharp end, as ever. But you don't ever hear of any of the management being sacked.
No, and there are still some very big salaries at the BBC, and these are huge cuts, though. And as ever, a lot of them seem to be falling in the news department, because producing news is expensive. Some would argue that's one of the prime purposes of the BBC as a national broadcaster, should be to have strong news coverage, especially international news. But these cuts are really, really heavy. And of course, one of the reasons they're forced on the BBC in many ways is many people are now not paying the licence fee, which the BBC depends on for its revenue. And the huge drop in licence fee revenue is really impacting BBC programmes.
Well, they should provide something that people want to watch, because, you know, there are people who are not paying it because they're watching it. They're not paying it. They're not paying it because they're not watching it.
Exactly.
And they're not using it. So they
why
can't,
should they pay
why
it?
should they pay it? Why should you have money for something? It's like paying for a cinema ticket and not going to the cinema.
Yes, exactly. And I think that goes to the heart of the problem. The BBC Charter, the way it operates, is up at the end of 2027, and it has got a long-term funding problem going forward, which it's discussing with the BBC, and how is it going to be funded sustainably and become and remain a good, strong public service broadcaster. And that's a real challenge because everything is getting more expensive. Television production, radio production, it's all getting more expensive. People don't want to pay for the licence fee. So what will the future BBC look like? Will it be a streaming product? Will it be an optional
Well, they're going
thing?
to try and force it as a tax on us in some other way. And I just say make the offering good enough. You know, people pay for streaming giants, don't they? They pay for Netflix or Disney Plus or Paramount or whatever it is. They're happy to pay for that, providing those streaming services provide them with what they want. As soon as you stop getting what you want, you stop paying Netflix, right? So the BBC has got to go. It's got to go the same way and have some faith in itself. And maybe
like
government needs to fund what they think is the necessary news angle of that, like they used to fund the World Service.
Well, that's it, because that's the key. Because some programmes that we think people should have, public information programmes, perhaps healthcare programmes, news programmes, probably wouldn't be self-sustaining without some kind of state support. They very rarely are. So I think that's the key, isn't it? What bits would the state fund through some kind of taxation, and what bits would have to fight for their own place in the market? I mean, it's interesting that the current new DG, who only started a month or so ago, Matt Britton, came from YouTube. So he will have a lot of the skills and expertise potentially to shepherd the BBC down a sort of brave new world where funding would have to come from different sources. And that's the challenge the BBC faces over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years.
And I just got a buzz in my ear telling me they are planning a 10% reduction in management. They could do with an 80% reduction in management at the BBC. Honestly, they just wander around with clipboards and book a meeting in Jill Dando.
Well, there's always a great phrase in the BBC that whenever management jobs are under threat, they always say deputy heads must roll.
Yes, deputy heads must roll.
The managers
absolutely, they really are a self-serving bunch. I can absolutely tell you that. The other story on the front page here is this is really very sad. There's a picture there of a major oak, a legendary tree in Sherwood Forest, has died at the age of 1,000 years. The oak under which Robin Hood is said to have sheltered is to be left standing as dead wood to help other wildlife in the reserve. So it'll eventually just become completely consumed by ivy and things like that, and creatures will go and live in it. It's a beautiful looking tree.
It is, and it's good that it's staying in some form, and it will, as you say, stay there as dead wood and presumably help other flora and fauna grow around it. But we get obsessed with our trees, don't we, in this country? There's the famous sycamore gap tree.
They're symbolic, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
So
1,000 years that tree has been.
Yeah, incredible when you think about it. America's only 200, 300 years old.
Yeah, but
we've got trees older.
We've got trees and toilets older than America. And the Trump deal with Iran, the 14-point agreement with Iran has been, it's been actually leaked by Iran, hasn't it? Or presented by Iran. And it's really counter to what Donald Trump has been saying. He's saying, well, we're not giving them any money. And yet there's £300 billion on the table here on this that America will be giving to Iran. So I don't know how he can just stand there and say, we're not doing this and we're not doing that. And it turns out that they are.
Well, exactly. He has to present it as a victory, and it doesn't look like that.
Absolutely no way it's a victory.
And
it's a strategic loss.
At the end of the day, it's still only a memorandum of understanding, effectively, because it's an extended sort of 60-day period or whatever it is to continue the negotiations to try and get a more lasting settlement. At the end of the day, Iranian oil is now starting to move. Iran is going to get some of its money released, sanctions potentially watered down. So very hard to see how it is any way a victory for Trump and America. But of course, that's what he always does, and that's what he'll portray it as. So we really need to see a bit more of the detail and need to see what happens in terms of the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. It looks as though some oil is starting to move, particularly Iranian oil, because the Americans lifted the blockade. So next few days will be interesting, but of course he's hailing it as a victory, as
and he
Trump
wants
always
us to be grateful that the Strait of Hormuz is reopening.
Yeah, the strait that was always open before.
That was always
we started
open
the war.
before.
Yes.
And there's only been an agreement for Iran not to charge tolls for 60 days, apparently.
Yes.
So after that, there could be a toll on that, which is against international law or maritime law, and it would give other people with these bodies of water the right to do the same.
Yes, it's disastrous, really.
It's a disaster. The world is so much worse off for all of this.
Very much so, and no real certainty over Iran's nuclear program either, which is the other key part of
none
this.
at all. Trump went from threatening Iran with more attacks to suggesting that it had basic rights to enrich uranium for civilian use, which is what it was doing anyway.
Yes.
So, anyway, and there would not be pressure from to Tehran to abandon its ballistic missile program either, because Donald Trump was saying, well, if Israel have got, missiles, then it's only fair that Iran have them as well. So this is an absolute failure. Yes. On almost every single level, there is no victory here for America. They look stupid.
No, and potentially everybody's significantly worse off because, as you say, it looks as though some kind of tolls will be introduced by Iran, potentially on the Strait of Hormuz. So they continue with their nuclear program, and they've got a tighter grip over one of the world's most important waterways.
Yeah, and they know that they can do it at a second's notice.
Yes.
They just have to fly a 30-grand drone into the Strait, and it's closed again for another 9 months.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. And they know they've got that power now.
Yeah, and they have an iron grip potentially on the whole global economy, really.
I mean, there is not one part of this that has been a success since Trump threw out the JCPOA for the Obama agreement, that he calls it, in his first term, because that actually was working, and there was oversight.
Yes, but he can't accept that. He has to keep saying that his deal, he likes to call it the Trump deal, is way better than the Obama deal, and there's no real evidence of that. And every bit of this looks as though it's a worse state of affairs than it was before he started.
Literally much worse. And I wonder how long it will be until he says, I've just ended another war.
Not long, I'm sure.
That's 9 wars I've ended now. Yeah, you started it. It doesn't count. I'm not said that's not allowed. And he'll get another fee for Peace Prize anyway. Quick break. Vincent, I'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So I think we've got most of the rest of the papers now, and I can tell you that the Sun's headline was worth waiting for. It is the best, and it is glorious. Well done, the Sun. Just a few floors beneath us here, 7 floors beneath us here is where they do the magic. And the headline is Texas Cane Score Massacre. Very well done. I like that a lot. That's very, very clever. This is England 4, Croatia 2, so they were waiting for the score before they finally put their front page to bed. Hero Harry Kane scored twice as England beat Croatia 4-2 in their World Cup opener in Texas. I'm still trying to grapple with the point system, and Paul Vincent is trying to explain it to me, and I'm a bit thick, so I'm not getting it. The Three Lions skipper converted a retaken penalty before firing home a brilliant bullet header. Goals from Jude Bellingham and Marcus Rashford against England's bogey team. What's that? What's a bogey team?
Team that beat us in the past. So,
okay.
So, yeah.
Sparked wild celebrations at the epic clash in Dallas. So there you go. Texas Kane score massacre.
It's very good, isn't it? Great headline.
Very, very good. I'm impressed by that. I wonder if a few beers were imbibed to come up with that one. It's fantastic. Let's have a look at the Daily Telegraph, and a lovely picture there of Jude Bellingham being kissed by Harry Kane on his back. Both of them, of course, scoring those goals. England flags face ban by council. Oxfordshire launches a legal battle to stop St George's crosses being raised in the street. Oxfordshire Council, they're facing a legal battle to ban raising Union flags in their streets. So it's Union flags as well. Union flags and St George's crosses. To ban raising Union flags, unless they've got that confused. Liberal Democrat-led county council has appealed to the High Court to stop people placing them on or near the highways. They're worried about people taking offence. Should they? This is an England tournament. I mean...
I think this predates the England tournament. This was sort of flags that were going up as sort of just support for England and that sort of thing. I think I can sort of see the point in a way, because the flags are going up everywhere in all sorts of towns and cities over the country, and I just think from a sort of aesthetic point of view, they look tatty pretty quickly, and there's an argument that people start putting up flags.
They're only going to be up for a month, though, aren't they?
I think once they're up at a high up a flag pole, it's pretty hard, or a lamp post, it's pretty hard to get them down. So, yeah, I mean, lots of people are in favour of them. Lots of people think we should be showing national pride by putting flags up everywhere. But I think a lot of these flags, they are seen by some communities as a sort of a territory claiming and a bit of a threat. So if it causes division, you can sort of see people's point about it. And I think presumably that's what the council is doing, is launching this legal battle because it thinks it makes other people feel a little bit unhappy about it and creates problems. But of course, it's in the middle of a World Cup campaign when lots of people want to put
their George cross up, not because they're being racist, but because they're being English.
Exactly.
And it is the England team, it's not the UK team. And Scotland can put the mitre up, I'm sure.
Yes.
So, you know, mind you, there's a different suggestion, isn't there, with the Scottish flag. 100 shoplifters are behind 4,000 thefts in London. So these are the criminal gangs, then, presumably. I mean, these are professionals, right, that are brazen and organised. But if they know the 100 shoplifters, why haven't they got them?
Well, exactly. That's what makes you wonder, doesn't it? And Scotland Yard and the British Retail Consortium have written to Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, and David Lammy, calling for quicker sentencing and tougher penalties. So I suppose the argument is some of these people, they do know who they are, they're put in before the courts, but they're not being locked up. Again, it goes back to the sort of issue over space in prisons and convicting people who commit crimes rather than just letting them off with a slap on the wrists. And I think what has been found, particularly with phone thefts and things like that, is that if you take the hardcore persistent offenders out of the equation, then the thefts drop quite quickly, because it is gangs behind it who are running either vulnerable people or coercing people into crime. And once you start targeting, as the Telegraph says, these 100 shoplifters, well, if they're behind 4,000 thefts and you deal with 100, then you deal with an awful lot of thefts at the same time. Yeah,
but I mean, just banning them from, from shopping. That's what they do. They go, well, you're not allowed near any shops then. And it's like, oh, great, that's really going to work, isn't it? And Jeremy Clarkson, this was a big story this morning. Yet another man who has been diagnosed with prostate cancer. He says it's aggressive, but it's been caught early.
Well, it's... good in some ways that he's come out and talked about it, because it just encourages more people, men in particular, to go and get tested, which is vital. And the key is always with these, and almost any illness really, is early diagnosis, and that's what he seems to be saying in this case. And he's very, very lucky, because although it sounds very serious and he does say it's aggressive, the fact that it was caught early gives him hopefully a very good chance of making a good recovery.
It gives him an excellent chance, because my best mate had aggressive form of cancer, of prostate cancer. He had a prostatectomy, and you know, his PSA has dropped to the floor, and now he just needs to be checked I think it's every 3 months at the moment, and then if it starts to rise again, he will then start on radiotherapy. But at that stage, it's completely curable.
Exactly, and there was pressure, wasn't there, a couple of months ago from David Cameron and others for a sort of much more widespread testing, which I think the government resisted. So this may reopen that argument again, because it is something that men do need to go and get tested for.
And this is, I am grateful to these celebrities or whoever coming out and saying this, because it puts it back on the front pages. It keeps it in conversation, and it's probably a lot of women that nag the men to go and get it done. But when you see somebody like Clarkson, who's a bloke's bloke, right?
Exactly. I think it's critical it's him, isn't it, for that reason?
Critical, yeah.
Because he's the sort of he is probably the sort of man that would need to be pushed towards and men that like him are the sort of men that would also need to be pushed towards the doctors.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, they got it. They found it. I say by accident, but he was in being checked because of his heart, because he had heart valves put in, didn't he? So it was and they just checked him on that as well, and so that's how they caught it in time. But he has a very good chance of a complete cure if he responds well to the treatments that he has, because it was caught in time. Let's go to the Times now. Iran peace deal lifts sanctions and creates a $300 billion building fund. Now, it has to be said that this has not been released by the US. They've not given us anything. It's a page and a half. As you said, it's not a peace deal. I don't know why everybody keeps calling it a peace deal, because it isn't a peace deal. It's a memorandum of understanding. It's the beginning of a peace deal. US-Iran deal creates a $300 billion reconstruction fund and immediately waives sanctions on oil experts in return for Tehran guarantees it will not develop a nuclear weapon. I mean, so much for Donald Trump, you know, completely slagging off Obama and saying, well, he bribed them. He bribed them with money. Well, of course, that's the only way. How else are you going to do it? And this is exactly what he's done in immediately lifting sanctions, which, by the way, the UN have said they will not. The EU have said they will not do immediately. They say, no, we're not just going to lift sanctions because you want us to. We're going to wait and see what the progress is. But this is an immediate release of sanctions.
Exactly, and he
so
looks
it's bribery. It's the same thing.
Yes, he's been pressured into doing it to get this memorandum of understanding underway and potentially a deal. And as the Times reports, the Times says after years of criticising President Obama for returning $1.7 billion to Tehran in 2015, Trump conceded he would also return frozen funds, saying, I guess we're going to have to give it back. So he's doing exactly what he criticised.
He's doing exactly, but he will still go on about, apparently, Obama went around all the banks, filled suitcases with this money and flew it into Tehran. He said, you know, the Iranians said that I probably can't even use that language, that Obama was, in inverted commas, an idiot. And they had no respect for him, but they've got respect for Trump because Trump's doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and several senior Republicans apparently voiced concern over this deal, and it just puts Trump's opinion poll ratings potentially further down. They're already low, and he's, of course, got the midterms coming up later this year, so puts him in a very difficult position.
And Bibi Netanyahu has his elections coming up as well, at roughly the same sort of time, I think. But he's insisting that it achieves everything we set out to accomplish and much more. No, it achieves nothing about what you set out to, what you say you set out to accomplish anyway. It achieves nothing. Like we're saying, it's worse than before. Iran have come out of this more powerful, wealthier, fewer sanctions, an oil market waiting for them. Iran have won.
Yeah.
By any measure. They've come out of this on top.
Yes, exactly. But Trump, as ever, will claim every defeat is a victory. He only ever talks in the language of victory and how he's the best president ever and
so this is historic, and it's going to change the Middle East for the better. Yeah. The yacht couple accuse the MOD of taking Russia's side. This is the couple that I was speaking about yesterday, actually, a British couple who faced warning shots from a Russian ship in the Channel, have accused the government of spreading Moscow's misinformation, because Moscow was saying, oh, well, we did it because we tried to warn them first, and we did this, and we sent up flares. There's no evidence that any of that is true. These are seasoned sailors, this couple. They would have been on the Station 16 or whatever it is, listening for any problems in the Channel. It's a very busy waterway. None of that happened, and they were only aware of it when they honked their horn and then shot at them. And they're saying, well, actually, the MOD is saying that we were warned, and we weren't.
Yeah, it does sound as though the MOD tried to play this down, perhaps fearing an international incident. And Mr. Kelvey, who was the 71-year-old who's I think at the helm of the boat with his wife, was asked if he was suggesting the Russians were trying to play down the incident. He said no, the British are trying to shut it down by agreeing with the Russians' comments on it. It's inflammatory, isn't it? He says. So he sort of feels that that he's not had that much support from the MOD because they don't want an international incident, which it sounds like this pretty much was and could have been an awful lot worse. I mean, at the end of the day, really, Russian frigates shouldn't be
just wandering about in the Channel anyway, and it's been sort of hanging around since the Ghost ship was taken, the Shadow Fleet ship was taken. It's been sort of hanging around. But yeah, they downplayed it. I love, though, that this 71-year-old doesn't give a damn about protocol or nonsense. You know, how dare they side with Russia? Change is coming, says Burnham in Snub to PM. It's a bit cocky, but anyway, we can't say much more than that because of the elections tomorrow. Right. The Daily Mail. That was late coming to us because of Rawsome. Harry, Jude and Marcus give 3 lines the ideal start. The second half of the page is taken up with Miliband set to trigger cabinet coup. Keir Starmer is braced for Ed Miliband to resign next week as part of a coordinated coup to force him out. Can you see Ed Miliband giving up that job?
I think if he thinks that a new leader's on the way anyway, that it's possible.
He wants to be Chancellor of the Exchequer, doesn't he?
Exactly, and it's a very febrile atmosphere at Westminster at the moment, and that's just another piece of speculation in the Daily Mail saying that Ed Miliband is on resignation watch, and it speculates also that the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has been placed on resignation watch amid the reports that she's done a deal with Andy Burnham, which is a claim that she denies. So there's all sorts of rumour and counter-rumour going around, because I think what people expect is that...
It's so arrogant. Why are they being so arrogant? How dare they just try and preempt what an election is going to do?
Well, that's the other thing. It's going to be hugely unpopular if there is effectively a coronation for Andy Burnham if he gets in and wins a by-election, because people like their leaders being elected and they don't like them, however popular they may or may not be, being foisted on them. Exactly.
Yeah, that way he was never felt that he was really properly PM, was it?
No, because he wasn't elected.
Because he wasn't elected, he was crowned. Right, quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is Vincent Moss, who's a former political editor. The papers, we're still very thin on the ground because a lot of them haven't come out yet, but there's the Metro. Kate makes comeback to light up Royal Ascot. So this is the first time she's been there for 3 years, I think, because of her cancer diagnoses. And there she is wearing a bright yellow, you can't miss her, Ascot outfit. It's good to see her out and about.
Yeah, it is. Great picture.
Yeah. An ex-England boss, Gareth Southgate, was also at the Berkshire meet. And the King's horse came last yesterday.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Oops.
Yeah.
The King and Queen were watching the race and their faces were absolutely classic. But, yeah, they came in last, despite being a favourite, I think. Right, so billionaire Gurko loses court battle to end income tax on traders' profits. This billionaire has lost a long legal battle over the tax treatment of profits made by individual traders. Supreme Court ruled yesterday that traders should pay income tax on their share of trading profits, a point that Gurko had previously argued would make a massive double taxation. But it's unearned income, isn't it? Oh, no, I suppose, yes, a bonus, profit? No, profit is, oh, I don't know. I think they should pay tax on that.
Yeah, I think the rest of us are all paying quite a lot of tax at the moment.
Yeah.
I'm not too fussed if a billionaire has to pay a bit more tax on their profits. So.
On the profit as well. Walsh era begins at Fed with ditching of bias towards lower borrowing costs. The chair's inaugural meeting, this is the Federal Reserve in the US, has dropped its leaning towards inverting borrowing costs in the US Central Bank's first meeting. So this is the new guy. I wonder if he's going to be more controllable by Trump.
Well, that's what Trump wants, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
he wants borrowing costs to come down, but of course he's got a problem because inflation is on the way up in
4% in America at the moment, yeah. Walsh era begins at Fed with ditching of bias towards lower borrowing costs. Well, that means higher interest rates, doesn't it? In my opinion. Who knows? And the iPaper D-Day for PM as Makerfield voters shape the future of the UK. And it really is it's an extraordinary by-election. These by-elections are normally like, oh, so what? You know, just some local MP. But, of course, this has quite serious repercussions, whoever wins, actually. It's one way or the other. Keir Starmer's brief respite, I feel, is over.
Yes, and the people of Makerfield, I'm sure, will be very, very happy when this is over for them too, because I think they're heartily sick of being doorstepped all the time.
They must be so bored. And then, of course, if anything, if the mayoralship becomes available, there'll be another election.
Exactly, and that's not too far off, because that's the next thing that will happen, is that if Andy Burnham does win the contest, then there's a vacancy for the Mayor of Manchester,
Yeah.
and Reform will have their eye on that potentially.
Absolutely,
as a target.
it's a huge target for them as well. What have you found today? Because we haven't got
quite a fun story in the Sun about the worst tippers in Britain, and I don't know if it's fair, but the people of Sheffield apparently have come out worst. Apparently, diners in Sheffield are Britain's stingiest tippers, according to a survey. Residents of the Yorkshire city, home to the actor of Sean Bean, who seems to be the sort of resident Sheffield celebrity, leave an average of only 5.4% of their bills, so just 5%. And top of the list, the Geordies, and Liverpool and Londoners who live about 8 or 9%. But yeah, Sheffield, I suppose, it's always a cliche, isn't it, about Yorkshire people being a little bit careful with their money.
Careful with their money.
Their money.
Yeah.
So now so mean as Sheffield Focus, says the Sun. So I don't know if people of Sheffield think that's fair or not, but they've not come out too well.
But we all pay a 12% anyway, don't we?
I think it depends on the restaurant. There's a lot of restaurants now putting 12.5% or 15%.
And then they expect you to tip on top.
Some of them do leave another box blank, and if you don't look too quickly, then you end up paying a double tip. So, but where it's left open, looks as though people in Sheffield, I suppose some people just don't leave a tip at all.
No, I mean it can get a bit silly with tipping, And I think, particularly if you go to America, you are expected.
America, 15 or 20%, but that's because the servers only get $2 or $3 an hour sometimes.
But
So
it
it's
doesn't
a
mean the
integral
food's
part of
any
their wages.
cheaper.
No, it doesn't. But that's very much part of their wages. Whereas in this country, everybody should be getting the minimum wage, whatever it is, 12, 13 pounds an hour. So the tips are on top of that. Whereas in America, it's a huge part of the culture that you should tip 15 or 20%. But that's because it's making up wages, really, because they're on such low wages.
Yeah, so you would feel like you had to do that. So there you go, Sheffield. They're just careful.
They're very careful with their money.
Careful.
I'm sure they're very generous in other ways.
Of course they are. What else have you got?
Interesting story in the Times. I don't know about you, but I remember the Wombles of Wimbledon Common.
I could sing you the song right now. I'm not going to, but I could sing you it almost all the way through.
Can't you be tempted to?
No. No.
So more than 60 years apparently after they first emerged from under Wimbledon Common, they're going to be rebooted for the YouTube generation, and apparently there are plans to get an official Wombles YouTube channel that'll feature all the original episodes from the 70s series. Now I'd have thought that'd be a really big hit, wouldn't you?
Oh, it's going to be great. Orinoco, Madame Cholet, I loved them. I thought they were
amazing.
And they were all environmental. I watched it as a kid. I absolutely loved the Wombles of Wimbledon Common.
And it was Bernard Cribbins, his narration, that really made it, wasn't he? And the music, the sort of soundtrack, so wombling around. So who was it who did this? Was it Mike Batt? I think he might have done
It might have been Mike Batt, yeah,
the theme song.
Was Mike Batt,
so I think that'd be bringing these things back is a good move, isn't it? There's people moan there's
they've got to bring the clangers back as well.
The clangers.
Loved the clangers.
Magic Roundabout.
Magic Roundabout, loved that.
Things.
All those things.
Rhubarb.
Rhubarb and custard.
Danger Mouse.
Oh, Danger Mouse, yeah, loved that. Baron Greenback.
Yes.
Amazing. No, the Wombles. And I think that actually, because it was a very early environmental message.
It was.
To us kids, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah.
And they used to make really great stuff out of the litter that they collected off the common.
But do you think the kids now would look at that and just think it looks really low-tech and lo-fi?
I don't think they're doing it in the same way.
Okay.
I don't think it's the stop-motion little puppets that they have.
Oh, fine, it's done in the sort of modern...
I think they're doing it in a more modern computer graphic-y way, which might spoil it. And Pickwick's. Do you remember Pickwick's?
Yes.
With the Hartley hair.
Yeah.
Hartley.
You think there probably
he
exists a channel
really scary.
where... Yeah, all of these should be brought back in one particular channel so that we can all just spend our afternoons watching reruns.
Yeah, I'd love to... I mean, Hartley terrified me. Hartley hair was the skankiest looking hair you've ever seen in your life, and he looked like roadkill, and he was very, very scary. Hartley. But yeah, I loved all of that. It's great. I want to be a kid again.
Yeah,
we had great programmes.
They were great.
Banana Splits on a Saturday morning.
Banana Splits, yeah.
They were looking at me like I'm mad. They're too young.
Exactly. They need to get onto YouTube and start.
Oh, they have bananas in pyjamas. That is not the same as the Banana Splits. I can assure you of that. We had radical, crazy, bonkers stuff.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what some of those creators were smoking at the time.
Absolutely.
You look back on those shows, and some of them were pretty mad, weren't they?
Jamie and the Magic Torch. Jamie and the Magic Torch. That was
even
weird.
the Magic Roundabout and all some of these shows.
Well, they were all named after drugs, weren't they?
Exactly.
They were all on drugs.
Yes.
The Magic Roundabout, they were all on drugs. Ermintrude was on weed.
Oh, I didn't know
that. Because she was very calm and was always chewing on something. The rabbit thing was on speed. No, Zebedee was on speed. And they all had a drug allocated, apparently. I mean, that's the thing.
If only we knew at the time.
If only we knew at the time. And then, of course, there was Captain Pugwash.
Yes.
And he never did Roger the Cabin Boy.
No, exactly.
There wasn't a Roger the Cabin Boy.
There were all sorts of innuendos on that show, wasn't there?
But I remember there being a Roger the Cabin Boy, but there wasn't.
Oh, wasn't there?
No, there actually wasn't
I do remember there being some very dodgy names in retrospect.
Called Roger they were dodgy names.
Yes.
But there was never a Roger the Cabin Boy. And I'm disappointed by that, because I'm sure I remember that. But no, apparently not. Apparently not. It was a trip through our childhood there. I mean, those programmes were... And also, we only had telly, didn't we? We only had a couple of channels.
2 or 3 channels at the most, wasn't it?
Yeah. So we would just watch what was on.
Exactly, and everybody had to watch the same programmes because there was no other choice, was there?
Oh, I just remembered Camberwick Green as well. Oh, that was nice. Anyway, enough rambling about old TV shows. Thank you very much indeed, Vincent Moss, for coming into the studio. We'll see you very soon, going through the papers. Right now, though, we are about to cross to the United States of America, where England has just won its first game in the World Cup, a 4-2 win against Croatia. And I'm going to be finding out how the fans are feeling on the other side of the water.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning to you, and it appears to be a very good morning. Not only did England win their first game in the World Cup against Croatia 4-2, but also it appears that Donald Trump has now signed the Memorandum of Understanding, which immediately ceases military operations in the Middle East. So it has begun, we hope, the 60 days has begun a little earlier than planned. It was due to be signed on Friday. We don't have confirmation yet whether the Iranian side has signed it, but it does appear that America has signed it. US agreement, Iran-US agreement is signed and now in effect. So we have 60 days now of toll-free travel in the Strait of Hormuz. America's lifted its blockade, it's going to lift its blockade, and the Iranians should do the same, and we should be able to see those ships start to now traverse the strait, at least for 60 days. What happens after the 60 days, we don't know. Iran has said they want to manage the Strait of Hormuz, and there was some talk about them charging tolls through there, which would set it would be unprecedented. It does happen in other waterways, but the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal and other waterways that are man-made, that is allowed to happen to replenish the money that it costs to make it. That's what tolls are usually for. But with an open waterway, with a waterway that isn't man-made. It has not been done before. So if Iran do that in the future, then that could really shake up shipping around the world, because other people will just feel that they can do the same. So we wait and see, but it is being reported that the Iran-US agreement has been signed and is now in effect. So if that is what's happened, if both sides have signed it, then that is a couple of days early. It was meant to be signed, I think, in Switzerland on Friday, and J.D. Vance was to be the signatory, but it appears that Donald Trump has signed it. So that's the latest on that. But, of course, the thing that most people are talking about right now is not any memorandum of understanding. It is the win in Texas by England against Croatia. And joining me now to discuss this and the game overview and all of that stuff is Steve Forbes, who's a sports journalist in North America. Steve, thank you so much for joining me. So we're off and running, it looks like.
Yeah, very much so. A decent win for England in Dallas, as you say, 4-2 against Croatia, a team they've had issues with in the past, most notably losing in 2018 to them in the World Cup in Russia. But solid this time, really. I think little to complain about for Thomas Tuchel. Maybe defensively a little bit sluggish. There may be question marks over the likes of Harry Maguire and Trent Alexander-Arnold not being in the squad, with the fact that John Stones and Konsa at the back looked maybe like they didn't have the best of chemistries, but they certainly had a lot of attacking prowess in the game. Started really brightly. Harry Kane netting a penalty. In fact, he had to retake it because the keeper from Croatia came off his line. So that penalty was forced to be retaken, and then they did get an equaliser before Kane added a second. We thought we were going to go England thought they were going to go into the half 2-1 up, but then Croatia pulled out an absolute stunner to make it level at half time. Seemed like maybe there would be some teething problems at the start of this tournament, but in reality, England came out of the blocks firing in the second half. Jude Bellingham with another goal for the Three Lions, and then Marcus Rashford sealing it right before the end. So I would say, all in all, most England fans would be fairly happy with what they saw, the evening over there, this afternoon here, and on to the next one in the tournament, really.
Who is the next one? Do we know? We don't know anything, do we? Because I can't.
Ghana.
Ghana.
Before we round out the...
Yeah, I mean, I can't...
Before rounding out the tournament against Panama, I believe.
All right, because I'm like probably a lot of people in this country don't quite understand, what this win means, and it just means that we're in with a chance to going on to the next level, right? It doesn't mean we definitely are.
No, I think with this tournament being 104 matches and 48 teams taking part in it, we have the eight best third place teams also making it into the round of 32. So really, 3 points gives you a very high percentage of making it out of the group. 4 points almost guarantees it. So I think, 3 points in the first game for England. You've got Ghana and Panama next, arguably two lesser opponents. I think it's really positive stuff for Thomas Tuchel and his men.
How did the fans react to this? And are we seeing a huge fan base in Texas or in the US?
Well, from what I watched on TV, Petrie, there was quite a big cohort of England fans at the Cowboys Stadium in Dallas. Here in Vancouver, I would say that there's quite a few English fans, especially the ones that I work with. So I actually watched the game at work in our cinema room, and with a lot of England fans cheering them on. Being Scottish myself, I can't say I was cheering too loudly, Petrie. I'm looking forward to the game against Morocco on Friday, personally. But I think there's a strong expat community in North America. I know a lot of people have travelled over for the tournament. So I think there is strong support for sure.
And you being, I'm disappointed. I thought you were going to be wearing a Scotland shirt, actually. My producer told me that you were going to wear your Scotland shirt while you were watching the England game. Did you actually do that?
I threatened my colleagues to, but I didn't in the end. I'm saving it for Friday's game when I watch them against Morocco.
Were you a little bit of a coward there, or just...
I couldn't be bothered to do 2 loads of washing, if I'm honest, and have to clean it again for Friday.
Typical bloke. I want to talk to you about the Tartan Army because it seems like the Scottish supporters have won the hearts of Boston. I mean, they love them there. I was watching some social media earlier on saying, please never leave. We absolutely love you.
Yeah, I think not only have they taken to people from Boston's hearts, but also their bank balances, because I've heard a few bars have ran out of beer. So I can imagine a huge amount of money's been spent in establishments that sell alcohol in Boston. But yeah, Scotland fans just making the country proud, really, I think, with their support. They're not causing any trouble. They're having a great time. They're getting on well with the locals. They recorded the loudest ever singing or chanting at a World Cup for that game against Haiti when they were singing Flower of Scotland. They took over Fenway Park. I don't know how they all got tickets to the baseball there, but there must have been thousands going to that game, all singing and chanting and having a great time at the baseball as well. So I think Scottish fans have been showing the rest of the world what the World Cup's about and how to support your nation properly in the right manner and not be causing any trouble as well.
Yeah, I mean, they got the bagpipes out, didn't they? I saw the Fenway when they were marching into to Fenway, and like you said, there seemed to be a massive crowd of Scottish fans behind the pipe players. But the Boston just absolutely loving it, and these swinging kilts and bagpipes just marching towards the stadium. It was quite something to see, and how they organised that as well.
Yeah, I don't know how they all managed to get tickets. One of my favourite stories is that a group of Scotland fans moved into I presume an Airbnb in the suburbs of Boston at midnight, and by 6 a.m. they decked the place out in Scotland flags and were out playing the bagpipes in the morning, waking the neighbours up. So I thought that was pretty funny.
I mean, it is fantastic to see, isn't it? And like you said, with the fans behaving in that way, it is a really strong message. And I'm half Scottish, so I can claim something on this. That it is just showing Scotland in such a fantastic light, and showing football in a fantastic light, and just creating joy in Boston, which I think takes itself quite seriously most of the time.
Yeah, very much so. I think, yeah, as you say, they've done themselves proud. They've got another game in Boston, Friday local time, against Morocco. That's going to be a real tough one because Morocco was so good against Brazil in their opening game. And then they round out the group in Miami against Brazil. So Scotland got a really tough group. Getting the 3 points against Haiti was a cup final in itself, essentially, giving themselves a really strong chance of making out of a World Cup group for the first time ever. You wouldn't say 1-0 was the strongest scoreline, but the 3 points are what mattered. They got it. If they get a point against either Morocco or Brazil, I'm sure fans would bite your arm off for that. They'd be ecstatic, and then you'd be making it out of the group into the round of 32. How
are the Scottish players coping with the weather, though? I mean, well, it's known for rain in Scotland.
I've heard where they've been training through a couple of the guys who are out there following the team that it's in the high 20s, very sweaty, very warm. But I suppose you just have to in a tournament like this. You can't necessarily let the weather affect you too much. There are these hydration breaks as well during the games. I think that's probably helping somewhat. I don't know how much that is to keep the players hydrated against chucking in another advert break where there wouldn't have been one.
I was just going to come to that, because aren't there strict rules around the level of advertising? And I know that the American networks and things, they want to make some decent money back from this tournament, and they do appear to be throwing in ads. And there was some controversy, wasn't there, about Fox throwing in adverts during the hydration breaks and not coming back to the football in time. So people missing, 2 or 3 minutes of actual play.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a loophole somewhere, Petrie, of how they can implement adverts in live sport. The feed I was watching was TSN, and they did come back to the action for the England game certainly in time, so that was fine. But I can imagine if you are an avid soccer football fan, and you're taking a couple of minutes out for these hydration breaks, and they're not coming back into the action in time, you'd be questioning your subscription for sure.
Yeah, I mean, but it just ruins the flow as well. It just spoils it. What about the hydration breaks themselves? I mean, these were brought in, obviously, to help the players. But does that break flow a bit, or is that just something we have to expect in these temperatures?
No, I think you're totally right. I think it can break the flow. I mean, obviously, you're looking at the welfare of players who are out there performing in these temperatures. It can't be easy. But you talk about flow, and I think we saw that most notably in the game between Germany and Curacao, because Curacao got an equaliser against the Germans. Then we had a hydration break almost instantly after that. And then they went on to lose 7-1. So I think they can argue they lost a little bit of momentum and flow through that. But maybe a little bit, but not on the whole. And I think it's probably a good thing that these are in place for the welfare of players. But when we have seen it before, it's been when temperatures have exceeded 30 degrees, and now they're just mandatory regardless of the temperature. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure on that one, how much it is welfare and how much it is advertising.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And Miami is another destination for us, and that is a difficult area as well, isn't it, weather-wise and just disruption-wise? We've seen that already.
Yeah, FIFA have got an internal WhatsApp channel where you can get severe weather disruption updates. I've not seen anything so far for Miami. Well, certainly not for the Scotland game. It's far too far out for that. But it's going to be the humidity, I think, that's really going to make the players suffer. Super humid climate in that neck of the world in Florida. And yeah, I suppose if there are thunderstorms, if there's heavy downpours as well. We saw it when England were playing in Florida in their warm-up matches. Yeah. Where the kickoff was delayed by an hour because of heavy downpours. That's something to contend with as well. But I can say I've played a little bit of football out here during the latter part of spring into the summer months, and we were in the mid-20s. I wouldn't say Vancouver is too humid, and it was tough. So I wouldn't like to be playing in Miami in 80-odd% humidity for sure. Not
with the sort of pressure that's on them as well from all of their countrymen and women that are supporting them. Well, listen, good luck on Friday with the Scotland game. I have to say that to people who watch, apparently, because I know you're not actually playing. But good luck with that. I hope you get the win that you deserve. Steve, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Steve Forbes there, sports journalist in North America. Yeah, Scotland, you should be so proud of your men and women folk who are out there because Boston has fallen in love with them. Quick break. I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And we've been talking earlier on about the major overhaul of the murder laws that could see crime split into first and second degree murder under Law Commission plans. The offence of murder could be watered down in the biggest shake-up in decades under plans by the Law Commission. Well, Ernie got in touch and said, if somebody, because I was questioning that why we need murder too, because murder is a very specific crime, and it is based on intent, the intent to kill somebody. So if you go out with a knife and you stab somebody, but you say, I didn't intend to kill them, then you would still be accused of murder. But in the new rules, you would then get murder too. Which is murder with some defence or some mitigation. Murder with a partial defence, that's what the term is. But my argument is that's we've got manslaughter for that, and also murder is still murder. If you stab somebody and say, well, I didn't mean to kill them, the act of stabbing them is grievous bodily harm. So you can say, look, I meant to grievously harm them, but I didn't mean to kill them, and then you get a lighter sentence. So I'm not convinced this is either necessary or the right way to go. But Ernie said, if somebody dies because of what you intentionally and illegally did, but hoped nobody would die, it's no excuse. You knew somebody would die, so that's murder. If you just want to harm somebody, but they could die, that's also murder. It's all about intention to commit criminal offence that could lead to somebody's death. You shouldn't do anything that could result in a death, whether you hope it doesn't happen or not. It's murder. And I'm with you, Ernie, on that, actually, 100%. I completely agree with you on that. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that you can just say, oh, I didn't mean to. That wasn't my intention. So when I was kicking this guy's head in, I only intended to give him brain damage. I didn't intend to kill him. And then you get murder too for it. It is watering it down, I think. But we'll wait and see. Well, earlier on I spoke to Stephanie Roberts, who's a senior lecturer teaching criminal law and criminal procedure and evidence at the University of Westminster. And I put a hypothetical situation to her about an arsonist who sets fire to a building to watch it burn, but inadvertently kills people trapped inside.
There was no intention to kill or cause grievous bodily harm, then they wouldn't be convicted of murder under either degree. So at the moment, that would come under manslaughter, because
even though the setting of the fire is intentional?
Well, that comes under unlawful act manslaughter. So under unlawful act manslaughter, person commits an unlawful act, there's a dangerous act, and then we have to show that there was a causal link between the unlawful act. In that case, it would be setting the fire. So the mind of the person is focused on the arson. If somebody happens to die during the course of those activities, then we would say that was unlawful act manslaughter, because if they don't know people are in there, there's no intention to kill them, and there's no intention to cause grievous bodily harm to them.
And yet they have still killed somebody.
But that's why it's manslaughter.
So how is manslaughter going to be different to second-degree murder? Because I thought murder was the intentional act of taking somebody's life. That's very specifically murder. And manslaughter, if you like, is the unintentional or other mitigations, right? So where does second-degree murder fit into that if we're still going to have manslaughter on the statute?
Well, intention is the key to murder. So the offences generally have an actus reus. They generally have a mens rea. So the actus reus is the guilty act, if you like. So that's the activity the person is doing. So in that scenario, it would be setting fire to the building. They also have a mens rea, generally, not every offence, but generally. So the mens rea represents the culpability. So it represents the blameworthiness of the person. So if you intend to kill or you intend to cause grievous bodily harm, intention is the mens rea for murder. So manslaughter is where you don't have intention. You have what we call a reckless state of mind. So there are different types of manslaughter. You have unlawful act manslaughter. You also have gross negligence manslaughter. So the jury will often be, the person will be charged with murder and manslaughter, and then it's up to the jury to decide whether there's an intention or not. So if they don't feel that there was an intention to kill or cause grievous bodily harm, then they will be directed to consider manslaughter. So, and then they will look under, there's potentially 3 types of manslaughter, including reckless manslaughter, but the jury have to be sure that there's no intention. So what the Law Commission are trying to do is to recognise that there may be a difference in culpability between an intention to kill and an intention to cause serious harm. At the moment, we can label somebody a murderer if they don't intend to kill anybody. They only intend them serious harm. So, and there's not an agreed, you know, these are just ideas at the moment. This is a consultation paper. So there's no agreement on that, whether, you know, there is the same level of culpability between intending to kill and intending to cause grievous bodily harm. But changing it to first-degree and second-degree murder would be acknowledging, if you like, that there is a difference in the person's blameworthiness. I mean, in both cases, that somebody has died. So it's a very serious matter, of course. But what the Law Commission is trying to do is to differentiate between different levels of culpability. So some would argue the person who intends to kill is more blameworthy than the person who just intends grievous bodily harm. Some people argue there's no difference.
Oh, no, because I was just thinking that, you know, if I had a knife, right, and I went out and I stabbed somebody, but I stabbed them, let's say, in the leg, because I just thought, oh, well, they won't die, but I hit a main artery and they died. That doesn't make any difference. I still went out, I still had a knife, I still stabbed somebody deliberately, but I can say I didn't mean to kill them and get away with murder too.
That's what obviously the lawyer would argue. So at the moment, the jury doesn't have to make that.
Nuts to me, because that I've still done all of those things, all of those wrong things, and then gone, oops, I didn't mean it.
Well, I mean, we frame murder around intention because intention is the most culpable state of mind that the person has. We're convicting them of a very serious offence, and we're potentially locking them away for a very long time. So we need to be clear, or the jury needs to be clear, when they are convicting somebody of murder, that they actually have committed murder. So at the moment, those distinctions are not important because they can decide, they don't really have to get into, is it an intention to kill, is it an intention to cause grievous bodily harm as such, because they can convict the person anyway, whether it's either of those two. So if they think it's an intention to cause serious bodily harm, they don't even need to go further to consider whether it's an intention to kill. But there is a school of thought that says that the mens rea should match the actus reus. So if the actus reus is activities that kill somebody, then we should have a corresponding mens rea. So we should only be locking people up for murder if they intend to kill somebody. I mean, the Law Commission are still saying they're going to be murder. So the difference, though, will be in the sentencing, because first-degree murder will still have the mandatory life sentence. So everybody convicted of murder has a mandatory life sentence. That doesn't mean they're all going to prison for life. Some people are. They're given a whole life term, but usually they're given a tariff. So they're given a period of years. That is the punishment phase, if you like, of the sentence. So once that tariff period is up, they are then eligible for parole. So they go before the parole board and the parole board decides whether to let them out. So everybody, however they've killed somebody, is included in that mandatory life sentence. So we don't distinguish between, for example, a mercy killer who kills a terminally ill relative that's asked them to kill them, and somebody who's just gone up to somebody in the street and shot them dead. The mandatory life sentence applies to both. But where we now differ, what the Law Commission are proposing, is that we only have the mandatory life sentence for first-degree murder. And then for second-degree murder, which would be an intention to cause grievous bodily harm, it's a discretionary life sentence. So the judge has much more flexibility in sentencing the person. So they would say, well, that reflects that an intention to cause grievous bodily harm is less culpable than an intention to kill somebody. Do you agree with that yourself? Do you agree that the intention to cause grievous bodily harm, which is a serious offence in its own right, but then leads to murder, that they should get an easier ride for it? Well, there's usually a difference in these things between a very legalistic, discussion of law and, what the public would understand. I think, in murder cases, I do think that there is a difference between intending to cause grievous bodily harm and intending to kill somebody. And I do think... But I would see somebody with a knife anyway, if somebody, God forbid, hurt my boy, and they said, oh, well, I didn't mean to, but I did have a knife on me, and I did stab him, but I rather hoped I wouldn't kill him. I would still see that as absolutely murder in intent and in every other way. And I'm sure the public would as well. Oh, I'm sure they would. Murder is a very, very serious offense. Taking somebody's life is very, very serious, yeah. And some would say that we are labelling people murderers when they're not. But they're still killers. They still killed somebody, but they're not murderers in the sense that they intended to kill the person. So if you only intend serious harm, people would say, why are we labelling those people as murderers? That we're putting people in prison for very... Do you think the public would say that? I don't. No. I think, I think the public would potentially see these as letting people off murder. But in terms of it being... the Law Commission, they are they're an independent body, but they're asked by the government to look into a particular area. They made very similar proposals in 2006, which the government then didn't adopt, of having a structure of homicide. A homicide is a very complicated area, particularly for juries. So at the moment, we can't ask juries why they make the decisions they do, because they're not allowed to talk about that. So we don't know whether, for example, if a jury is deciding, does the person have an intention to kill or cause grievous bodily harm, they may decide it's grievous bodily harm, but they don't want to label that person a murderer, so they acquit them. But I'm still not clear as to why second-degree murder is in any way really different to the manslaughter charge we already have on statute. Well, because that's there, as you said. If you can't find them guilty of murder, find them guilty of manslaughter. Because murder and manslaughter require a different state of mind. So the jury, when they're deciding whether somebody has intention, they are looking at it through the eyes of the defendant. So it's what we call a subjective test. So they're trying to work out what was in the defendant's mind at the time they committed the crime. And we have different types of intention. We have, direct and oblique intention, which I won't go into. But manslaughter is a different state of mind. So manslaughter is where they don't have an intention. But I thought second-degree murder was as well. Well, if it goes, yes, if the changes are made, second-degree murder would require intention. But that's really no different from now in terms of murder and manslaughter, because murder now requires intention. Yeah. And manslaughter. So we don't need second-degree murder then, because we've already got murder and manslaughter. Well, that's a perfectly fine argument. These are just suggestions at the moment. Yeah. What they're asking for are responses. They want people to respond. Anybody can respond to a Law Commission report. So, I would advise anybody just to respond. But that's a perfectly valid argument.
So there you go. I don't know if I'm any clearer really on why you would even bother with first degree, second degree, and manslaughter charges on the statute. But it just looks like a way of people with first degree murder watering down to second degree murder and then getting a lesser sentence. Anyway, let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. That was Stephanie Roberts, a senior lecturer teaching criminal law and criminal procedure and evidence at the University of Westminster, speaking to me earlier.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good morning to you. This is Talk and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And just a little bit more detail from the US-Iran deal, because there was a briefing call with some senior US officials in Washington, and they read out verbatim what they say is in the text of the Memorandum of Understanding. And these are the three key points that stood out. On the nuclear question, senior officials say Iran has promised not to develop or procure a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump has made that his #1 condition for a deal ever since the start of the war in February. They also said that Iran's enriched uranium will now be down-blended, so in other words, it will be diluted on site in Iran under the auspices of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. Originally, the US had demanded that it be removed from the country, so that's new. But that also, I thought it was just dust under a mountain, according to Donald Trump as well. So how are they going to get to it to downgrade it? But anyway, on the question of the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, the senior officials said that there would be no charges for shipping going through for 60 days. After that, it's up to Iran and its neighbours to negotiate what happens. That leaves open the possibility of charges in the future where there were absolutely no charges before the conflict. And then there's this controversial $300 billion reconstruction fund, which President Trump had described as fake news, but it is in the document. The senior officials insisted, though, that America doesn't need to pay a cent towards that, and it will depend on Iran behaving, as they put it. So where is this money going to come from then? If they're going to be given $300 billion to reconstruct Iran, well, it was America and Israel that blew up Iran, so you can't ask us to put some money in the pot for that, because we didn't have anything to do with it. So I don't quite understand that either. But the agreement, which is only about a page and a half long, I've got more details on it, which I'll read out to you a little bit later on. It will be scrutinised line by line over the coming days, and the big question will be, what exactly did the US get out of its war with Iran? And that really is a big question. So Donald Trump has signed this memorandum of understanding. It gives 60 days now to iron out some of the finer details, and it also provides only 60 days where there's a guarantee of no tolls being charged to travel through the Strait of Hormuz. Like I said, I've got more information on that, which I will give you a little bit later on. But as we've been talking about, the plans or the suggestion that the murder law in this country could be split into first-degree murder, second-degree murder, but also retaining manslaughter on the statute books, which I don't understand what the difference is between murder 2 and manslaughter, because murder 1 is about intention, right? And it always has been, right? It's for the deliberate act of killing somebody. But in murder 2, it can be murder, but with, you know, some excuses thrown in. I didn't mean to kill them, right? That would be murder 2. So some people are concerned this is a watering down of the law that we already have, although the Law Commission say what this does is provide for a wider range of people to face stiffer sentencing. Well, I thought it would be interesting to find out how this works in the US. US homicide law uses a tiered system based on intent, categorising offences into first-degree murder, second-degree murder and manslaughter. So Joseph Tully joins me now. He's a criminal defence attorney in California and founding partner of Tully and Weiss Attorneys. It's good to speak to you again, Joseph. How are you?
I'm doing well, and thank you so much for having me.
It's it's taking a bit. I can't get my head around this split in the murder law, and perhaps you can explain to me in America how the 3 tiers work in terms of the killing of somebody.
Sure. So in America, we divide up murder usually. I mean, there are 50 states. They all have different laws. But in general, we can summarize it as there's usually murder 1 and murder 2. And think about it like this. Murder 1 is a planned killing. There was an intent to do it. It was planned. Murder 2 is an unplanned killing. There is still an intent to kill, but it wasn't planned. So murder 1 would be lying in wait, poison, things like that. Murder 2 would be you're in an argument with somebody and you don't like them, and you pick up a gun and shoot them. However, to make things a little bit more obscure, is that there's actually a very thin line between murder 1 and murder 2, and I think that's what you're kind of having trouble with, is because a law student can wax on and on about the differences, but a seasoned trial attorney can tell you that it's whatever a jury says.
Oh, right, yeah, because I put it to a law professor from the UK earlier that if I went out with a knife, I had intentionally had my knife with me, I intentionally went and found the person that I didn't like, and I intentionally stabbed them, but I didn't mean to kill them, that's murder 2. But I'd still taken my knife and stabbed them.
So, yeah, that would be in America. That could be either or. It could be murder 1 because there's an intent, a pre-intent. You took a knife, you pulled it out of your pocket. You didn't like that person. You pulled the knife out of the pocket and you killed them. I guess yes, that if there was a defense of, well, I meant to stab them, but I didn't mean to kill them. If the jury believed that, then you might be looking at manslaughter. And our manslaughter, we have voluntary and involuntary, just like the UK does. So on the murder law, we're different in that the US divides up murder 1 and murder 2 based on planned or pre-planned, or planned or unplanned. But manslaughter is, we still have voluntary and involuntary.
But I don't, this is the other thing that I was struggling with, Joseph, is that the need for murder two and manslaughter, because again, the manslaughter kind of covers for us a killing without intent. So I don't know where murder two kind of fits into that pattern.
Sure. So it would be something in manslaughter. There may not be for involuntary. There's no intent to kill. There's an intent to do something very dangerous, reckless, and you should have known that it could have killed someone, and here it did. Voluntary manslaughter would be heat of passion. The typical example is someone comes home and finds their spouse in bed with someone else, and they're just overcome with anger and they shoot. And there would be a very thin line between that situation and a murder two situation where there's a killing, but it was unplanned. And again, law students could write 50 pages on the differences between these four different crimes. But a seasoned trial attorney will tell you it's whatever jury says it is. It's open to many different interpretations. And so the tension that you're feeling in observing this law is very real. And it's real on the books, and it's real in its practical effect as well.
It just strikes me that you could commit the same crime, but depending on your attorney and your defence lawyers, it could be either murder one or manslaughter, depending on how well your defence attorney argues for you, or how deep your pockets are, how good an attorney you can buy, that could take the exact same crime. So two people commit the same crime. One's got loads of money and good attorneys, the other hasn't. One goes down for murder one, the other gets manslaughter.
You're correct, and that is a very valid criticism. And you're also correct in pointing out that it's not just resources, and it's not just a good attorney. The best combination is a good attorney and resources to fund a good defense. And yes, those are very valid criticisms. A good attorney can move a case from murder one past murder two down to involuntary manslaughter. Sometimes, usually voluntary or involuntary manslaughter, there are differences. They're not really interchangeable, but murder one, murder two are absolutely interchangeable. And murder one, murder two, and voluntary, or murder one, murder two, and involuntary are also interchangeable.
So it provides a sliding scale then for people, as opposed to you've taken somebody's life, therefore that you've killed somebody, therefore you're going to prison. It's this whole idea of the thin line between an intent and non-intent as well is very subjective, right?
It's completely subjective. So in California, which is where I practice, there is case law that says that that reflection on premeditation could occur in a fraction of a second. So as long as there is reflection, that would be murder one. But just absolutely blindly kind of acting on raw emotion, picking up a gun and shooting someone that you're arguing with, where it's over, let's say, football or something, that would be murder two. But if a good prosecutor argues, well, the person blinked before they shot, or they waited half of a second and then shot anyway, that would be the difference in California between murder one and murder two. So creating more choices also creates less standardization, and it does open itself up to the valid criticism of you don't know what's going to happen, and you're going to have inconsistent application of the law depending on the facts, depending on the attorneys and the jurisdiction that you're in, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that there are laws that we all expect to be treated the same through is a fallacy, isn't it? And with this ability to sort of slip people around this tiering of killing somebody, is the victim considered? Because you still, at the end of the day, you still tragically got a dead person whose life was taken from them by another person, which is an unforgivable act, and yet it seems that can just be watered down. Where is the victim in this legal system?
From my observations, I'm sorry to say, but a lot of the justice system is fueled by ego. There's not a lot of justice as a motivation, and there's not a lot of thinking about the victim. There is some in there, and the laws are very serious, and there are many great judges, many great prosecutors, many great law enforcement who are motivated by doing the right thing and by pursuing justice. But as with any occupation, there are good lawyers, bad lawyers, good judges, bad judges, good law enforcement, bad law enforcement. And all too often I see where justice, including getting justice for a victim, is not really the prime consideration. It's more, can the prosecutor win? Will the judge be perceived as soft on crime, which will hurt their reelection bid?
Yeah, what a tragedy, isn't it, that the law is being watered down in this way. Fascinating to talk to you, Joseph. Thank you. I think I am a little bit clearer now, so I do thank you for that. Otherwise, I'd have been thinking about that for days. Joseph Tully there, criminal defence attorney in California and founding partner of Tully & Weiss Attorneys. A quick break, back in a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk. Well, here at Talk, we're celebrating the World Cup in style. We've kicked off well, haven't we? A 4-2 win against Croatia. So how do you fancy getting your hands on a massive £26,000 in tax-free cash? Imagine what you could do with all of that money. If you could do with a boost to your bank balance this summer, then here are the details on how to enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1 PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
There you go. It's as easy as that. A couple of messages I want to read here. Rick has said the difference between murder 1 and murder 2 is premeditation, perhaps. It's intent. Yeah, so you can still premeditate to go and give somebody a kicking, right? You decide you're going to go out and you're going to go and beat up a bloke and you start kicking him in the head and you decide you want to kick him in the head because you want to cause grievous bodily harm, and then you accidentally kill him. That would be murder 2, because the intent was only to cause grievous bodily harm, not to kill. But in my view, that shouldn't be murder 2. That's still murder. That's you still going too far. The planning and premeditation was still to cause grievous bodily harm. You just didn't mean to kill them. That would be the difference between murder 1 and murder 2. And JK says, if you push somebody over on the ice joking around and they crack their head and die, that's manslaughter, not murder. Yes, that would be involuntary manslaughter. But if you deliberately pushed them over because you hated them and you knew that they were going to crack their head and you wanted them to hurt themselves, that would be an intention. So that might be manslaughter, culpable manslaughter in that regard. If it was a pure sort of like, oh, so be silly, and they fell over and cracked their head, that would be involuntary manslaughter, I imagine. Anyway, it's fascinating to me. I love the law. I'd love to have gone into. If I'd been a bit smarter, I'd probably gone into law. I'd like to have been a barrister. Anyway, but let's ask Carol what she thinks about this, because there's change in the law. Morning, Carol.
Oh, good morning. And like Marvin Gaye would say, what's going on? That's all I can say.
Do you see this as a sort of, it's been troubling me, is this idea that you could, with a good lawyer, you could downgrade a murder 1 to a murder 2?
Exactly. And I have a good lawyer. I've got my eldest girl who is a massive, great, good lawyer anyway.
Oh, well, I'll be coming to you if I get done for anything.
Well, I'll say you now, and I'm absolutely gobsmacked of what I've learned with you today on your programme. I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. I don't get it. And it's got that way now, I'm feeling, is that we have so many slots for the criminal, the person who's murdered that person, and the person who has the family and the person who's been murdered, right, has no...
They've got no place in it, have they? They're not even being considered here. Because a good lawyer will be able to say, no, they didn't mean to... They meant to hurt them, but they didn't mean to kill them. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the same thing. If you go too far with being deliberately wanting to hurt somebody and you kill them, then that's still murder.
And it is. And I'll be honest, right, I watched a programme, fully enough, this week. I like anything about law. And it was on Netflix, and it was literally called The Evil Lawyer.
All right.
And it was a South Korea program or whatever. Like my kids say, God, Mum, I can't, like...
South Koreans make great telly and films.
Absolutely, you have to watch it. And it's to do with children. It's to do with the baby. I mean, it's only fictional or whatever, but it was amazing how it gave every area towards juvenile children and what lawyers do and how children get away with things and everything like that. And I was just watching it and I just thought, oh my God, I hope it doesn't get to that area like within our lifetime and everything. It's definitely a good watch,
I will look out for that.
Yeah, just have a little look at it. Honestly, you'll get the 10 of them anyway, and really, really clever how it's worked. But the thing is after remember speaking to you today, and I'm thinking, my God, we're going down that road. We're actually going down that road where we're trying to fix murderers.
Yeah.
Right?
We're trying to make life better for people who've killed somebody. We're trying to make it easier for them.
Yeah, instead of the victim. And it's not only the victim, it's not only... And I have to say, I've had several murders within my lifetime, and my husband's sister got murdered when he was very, very... Well, he was in his teens and whatever. So I know what it is, and I know how it affects, and I know that it stays within a family for so long. It really, really does.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, like, all it comes down to, because at the end of the day, when a murderer gets a lawyer, the lawyer is there to try and get them off. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it, and that's the way it is. And it's a game. That's all it is, a game. But it isn't for those people that they've lost loved ones by somebody who's murdered them. And you can say, okay, it wasn't intentional, it's got that way now that it's so pushed over. And then if you're having these new things that are coming out, which first degree, second degree, manslaughter, how many slots are we going to go down? How many slots are we going to go down to get away for a year or two? Like, oh my God, it's scary.
I think it is, and